Mr. Hess. We'll move on to the next item. Madam Clerk, are you ready?
Yes. Item number 18, subject request from Mayor Murillo and Mayor Pro Tempore Rouse regarding an update on downtown economic vitality.
Okay. This is an item brought by myself and Mayor Pro Tem Rouse. Our goal is to inform the public about the city's programs and activities related to economic vitality in the downtown and some specific initiatives we're working on to address empty storefronts on State Street. And we are strong partners with Downtown Santa Barbara. I'm happy to see them in the audience today. And thank you also for the retail study that you commissioned. It really laid out some solid recommendations related to the changes in consumer spending and how the retail environment is changing, and it's had a big impact on State Street. And since this hearing has been publicized, we've received so many emails. I'm thinking people are thinking this is the only opportunity to weigh in. That's not true. We're working on a community workshop to follow up on this discussion, and everybody has a lot of good ideas to bringing vitality to downtown. I'd also like to thank at the risk of not thanking everybody, I'd like to acknowledge Visit Santa Barbara, Hospitality Santa Barbara, the Chamber of Commerce, Women's Economic Ventures, the Association of Realtors, and the World Business Academy and Impact Hub, among others. A lot of organizations have been working with us and meeting with us, sharing ideas. The Office of Arts and Culture, our partnership with the county on arts and culture, great ideas about some putting beautiful things in the windows, in the empty windows. So you'll hear more about that later. Separate from that workshop, our community development department is coming before the council in September. They will update us on the Accelerate program, which is a way we've expedited permits for empty storefronts on State Street. And we may end up hiring an outside consultant, an expert in downtown business issues. And if we do, that'll create a whole other a process by which the public can participate in visioning and strategic planning going forward. I'd like to thank Councilmember Eric Friedman for suggesting that during our budget discussions. There's been a lot of support for hiring a consultant. Please, you're coming up to the podium. We're going to have a big public comment period. Let us know if you support that. And finally, I'm the City Council liaison to Home for Good, which used to be called the Central Coast Collaborative on Homelessness. And I believe Emily Allen is here to give us an update because our homeless neighbors have an impact on downtown. And I'm going to steal a little bit of her thunder to announce that Jeff Schaefer is being reassigned from North County to downtown State Street. And he's forming a State Street team to help us deal with negative street behavior. He's good at helping the homeless and addressing the impacts created by people living on the streets. Doctors Without Walls just sent me an email this morning. They have an initiative as well, helping people with medical problems on the street. And I'd like to turn it over to Randy Rouse. We brought this item together. Randy's a longtime business owner in the downtown core, an active member of the business community, and it's been an honor to work with you on these issues. Mr. Rouse?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I'm not really surprised to see this many people turn out for this. This is really important. Like the mayor said, I've been in business across the street for 35 years, and it's never been harder than it is today, as it is for many of you in the downtown. When I was first elected, my big priority was putting more uniforms on the street, more badges on the street, and we actually did that. With my colleagues, we actually did that, but that by itself wasn't the answer. And we did a lot of other programs, the Accelerate program. The AIA put on a fabulous charrette, very creative, a lot of effort. By themselves are not the answers. We have a very dynamic problem. But what heartens me about today is the list I got from some of the groups that have been working on it. These lists were specific action items. They're reasonable. They're doable. I'm very excited about what you guys have put together for us. Normally our suggestions that we receive are more along the lines of, wake up and do something, some fist pounding, and frankly, things that probably aren't medically possible. Where now we have action items we can point to and work with you, and you can work with us to do this. So one of my one of my goals in the remaining time I have here is to make it so the city is no longer an impediment to progress. The city will move forward as a partner and not be able to be part of the hurdle that you have to cross in order to be in business. I think it's really important to change that dynamic. I think we have people in our staff and in our administration that are right on that same page. It may not always feel like it. It may not happen tomorrow, but we take the words customer service very seriously. We know that we have a situation that needs to be reformed, and I think that in and of itself is one of the big keys to moving the downtown forward. So in partnership and collaboration with you stakeholders, the people that put this fabulous input together, I think this is a great start to the day, and I think we're going to move forward and hopefully sooner than later, because Lord knows we all need it. Thank you.
Thank you. And one great set of comments came from Amy Cooper of Plum Goods and the Santa Barbara Retail Task Force. See, I knew I would forget someone once I started thanking. So thank you, Ms. Cooper, for what you sent us today. So Nina Johnson works in our city administrator's office, and she has a presentation for us. Thank you so much for all the work you're doing related to economic development in the city. Ms. Johnson.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and council members. I'm Nina Johnson, Senior Assistant to the City Administrator, and today I'm going to be giving an overview of various efforts underway through city departments and other organizations to improve economic vitality downtown and some other options to consider. We're facing a number of challenges on State Street. How do we maintain a vibrant downtown corridor and keep people engaged for 14 blocks? How do we create a community culture that helps businesses be their best, not just survive? We've heard a lot about convenience of online shopping, especially for the basics, but many people still crave an experience, and so the experience of State Street is more important than ever. And there are many components and players in the experience. There's no single driver of economic vitality. It belongs to all of us. The city, county, MTD, numerous business organizations, small businesses, the business owners, property owners, commercial brokers, incubators, co-working spaces, developers, lenders, we're all in this together. So we're really excited. It's going to take a lot of hard work from many people, and happy to see so many people here today. Everyone's a critical part of the conversation. To get back on track, get the magic back on State Street. Not too long ago, the community also dealt with a number of the few incidents that were devastating to the business climate. These emergencies really magnified the issues that we were already facing and really brought us to the forefront here today. So all of the meetings and workshops we've conducted, we have compiled a lot of the comments that we've received and suggestions. And for those who are in the audience, there are some grids, and hopefully there's still a few back there that look like this, blue and white. We have compiled basically all of the projects underway in city departments, also different organizations working on leading various efforts. And then by category, we've shown at the bottom of each section other ideas to consider based on community input, results of a number of these meetings and workshops that we've had. This is not an all-inclusive list. These are the most frequently mentioned ideas. So you may have a number of great ideas that didn't get on the list, and it's really a starting point that we can keep adding more that we hear today and we've been receiving. So let's get started and we'll talk about economic vibrancy. We may have different ideas about what economic vibrancy means, but at least we can all agree on what it doesn't look like, vacancies. The largest vacancy we're dealing with on State Street is Macy's. Along with 100 other stores, they closed the Macy's on State Street at the State Street location, and the city had a 75-year lease with them. Pacific Retail Partners that operate Paseo Nuevo, they acquired the remaining years of the lease term, the remaining 48 years on the lease. And we're currently in negotiations with them to ensure a high-quality development for that space and an investment in the full property. Also addressing vacancies, downtown Santa Barbara worked with a consultant last year to conduct a retail study. And they really focused on a number of different trends in the retail mix on State Street. They found that the current retail mix targets teenagers and tourists. They had a lot of advice for different stakeholders along State Street. They had a lot of recommendations related to signage, storefront, the merchandising. Basically, how does a store appeal to the people on the street and bring them into the store and want to keep moving into the store and spending? So window displays and how a store is laid out. There's some great recommendations in that study. It's on our website, and it's on downtown Santa Barbara's website. We encourage business owners to take a look. We also hosted a workshop with Impact Hub and Women's Economic Ventures a few months ago. And one of the issues that we spent a lot of time on vacancies, one of the takeaways was getting more creative with vacant space. And we looked at different ways that we could encourage pop-ups, art displays in windows, just to make sure that there's more appeal and something other than dark spaces and signs, real estate signs, as you walk past a vacant storefront. There are many people looking to start their business, and they don't want to start they don't want to enter a 3-year lease, and they don't have 6 figures in the bank to make improvements on a space and jump into line for permitting. So as a community, we can look at how can we lower the risks to help entrepreneurs get started. And we've got a lot of the vacant spaces. This is really an opportunity for us to help some entrepreneurs get started, work with property owners and brokers who have vacant space on State Street. I think there are some opportunities for businesses to get feedback on their business model before investing their savings and going too far down the path that before improvements start on a space, if there's a long-term tenant, someone can have a short-term arrangement just for a few months. You could have a space, an arrangement where there's no long-term tenant and there's an option to sign on for a longer term if the business and the property owner want to work that out. We're looking at putting in new tenants in areas where for the previously permitted use. So a retail business going into another area, another space where retail business currently existed. And no building permit would be needed because they aren't making improvements to the building. And a new tenant could then plan improvements if they wish to stay in a space. They could be earning revenue while they're in a space if they wanted to plan out further improvements and stay longer. So this is a quick snapshot. It doesn't take much to get into a space without improvements. This is a creative window display, some beautiful sandals, some paint, furniture, decoration. There are a number of things that can be done in a space without spending a lot on major improvements and needing a building permit. So this is something that we'd like to pursue, and having an event to match up property owners and prospective tenants and collectives to help them get started. For those who want to make larger plans and improvements, we started the Accelerate program on State Street last year, where projects go to the front of the line for a building permit or for design review. Our goal is to get spaces occupied faster. Following the Thomas fire, Council also added Coast Village Road to the program. We're seeing some improvements, but we know we still have work to do. A full update on this effort is coming back to Council on September 18th. Aside from the retail uses, there's been a lot of discussion about housing, adding more housing downtown, and more housing would go a long ways towards rebalancing the retail mix more towards residents' needs. We have an average unit density, or AUD, program to encourage smaller, more affordable units. And the city's housing task force met for a year looking at various ways to encourage smaller, affordable units. Council discussed their recommendations, and this matter is now pending with the Planning Commission. Local architects have also been very involved in the housing discussion, hosting a design charrette last year. And they had a lot of different recommendations and for opportunities for more housing, downtown parking lots, and also looking above and behind retail spaces. Moving to a different side of the housing discussion, we've been challenged for many years with homelessness and how to help people transition off the street. It's very important for us to create safe, inviting areas for people to shop and dine. We started a program last summer where uniformed ambassadors patrol the street, and they kind of serve as the eyes and ears of the police department and work closely with social service agencies as well, AmeriCorps. They greet people, provide directions, identify maintenance needs along the street, and they interface with the businesses on a regular basis. With the help of a state grant, we secured over $300,000 a year for 2 years to double the staffing of the program, and that's effective July 1st. The additional public safety presence is hopefully to deter nuisance activities, enforce our smoking laws, and provide general enforcement activities for a number of issues. As a result of that grant funding that's now in place, we have 2 to 4 ambassadors patrolling State Street from 9 a.m. and now into the evening hours to 10 p.m. every day. Also with this grant funding, we added police officer staffing to lead enforcement efforts, work as a team with the ambassadors, deter nuisance activity on State Street. We have a restorative policing program where officers work with social service providers and help people transition off the street in lieu of jail time by getting them into services. Last year, they placed 86 people in detox, mental health, and other services. This is a picture of restorative court, and there's a new program that is coming together that the City Attorney's Office and Police Department are working on, Solutions Court, to address how nuisance crimes like sleeping in public, drinking in public, how those crimes are prosecuted, again, helping people get services in lieu of jail time. And this is a partnership coming together with the District Attorney's Office, Public Defender's Office, probation, and other service providers. I mentioned earlier drinking in public. Access to cheap, single-serving alcohol contributes to a lot of public intoxication and inappropriate behavior. Our police department is currently working on drafting a new alcohol ordinance that would restrict single-serve bottles in convenience stores, drugstores, gas stations. And council will start discussing that new alcohol ordinance in September. I mentioned the state grant that we received for smoking issues. To create a cleaner, healthier environment, council adopted a law that prohibits smoking in public areas. So that includes our parks, beaches, sidewalks, all of our parking lots, parking structures downtown. And signs are currently being designed so that they match our wayfinding signs. So look for those soon. A large part of the State Street experience is the streetscape, our sidewalks, furniture, and landscaping. The city contracts with a downtown organization for sidewalk cleaning and landscape maintenance, and they're soon going to be shifting to new equipment and a recycled water system that should enable them to use more recycled water to power wash the sidewalks. I think that will be helpful in getting better cleaning. We're also continuing to fix the brick sidewalks and a lot of the furniture that's out on the street. So refurbishing the benches, street lamps, trash cans, bike hitching posts, and news racks. To help visitors, we've completed wayfinding signage to help locate parking and points of interest. And for those who want to hop on MTD's new downtown waterfront shuttles, we're working with hotels to offer day passes that for the hotels so that they can sell to guests. And that's going to be available next month. Another idea here to consider, especially for events like First Thursday, is incentives for the shuttle, incentives for parking. So staff's exploring doing that to bring more people downtown. First Thursday, downtown Santa Barbara and a number of different arts organizations are looking at ways to reboot First Thursday, have new offerings, plan more efforts to bring people, add some fresh life into what we've been doing for so many years. Women's Economic Ventures, in a different marketing effort, they're looking at a campaign to help residents spend with local businesses, encouraging our residents to spend with local businesses, support local businesses, and they have a number of different business organizations that we're working on to plan the program. And there are many ideas that we've received in terms of events and how to bring people downtown. Downtown Santa Barbara is looking at block parties and events involving street closures, farmers market enhancements, more family-friendly activities, kids' nights, and so forth. Perhaps moving some of our city-funded events that are in other areas closer to downtown where there's more parking, more shops, and more opportunities to eat. And then we've also talked about just streamlining our event procedures and approvals. There's a lot of talk about who would be planning events, but the more we make it easier for others to plan their events, we're going to see a lot of people come forward with creative proposals for more events. So making it easier to plan events through our procedures. Arts and cultural activities are a significant component of our economic vitality. The city provides over $700,000 each year for events, festivals, and the arts. The film festival, summer solstice, Old Spanish Days, many more. It brings pedestrians to the area who are going to do other spending. Ticket sales, dinners, souvenirs, overnight hotel stays. The impact is tremendous. These cities' funds leverage additional grants and private dollars to make projects happen. In the upcoming year, we're going to be reviewing our grant funding and how we disperse it just to make sure that we're getting the most out of our dollars, and we've got more public art projects coming on State Street. Throughout downtown, we have a lot of dead spaces, and we need to activate these areas and help make these areas places where we can connect. We need more areas where people can flow through and bounce around. This is a picture of Stork Placida, which is very close by to City Hall. And this is an area where we don't need any improvements, but an art installation here would be very easy to do. Along those lines, Council just approved funding to redesign the Library Plaza and make it more open and inviting, host events there. We've been looking very closely at the State Street underpass and how to re-energize this 2-block area that connects the Funk Zone with the rest of downtown. Today, it's not a very welcoming area. We recently held a workshop, and a few hundred people came out to share their ideas and run free with creativity with how we could redesign the space. A lot of great ideas were raised, and they're all posted on our website. Reducing the number of vehicle lanes and allowing more space for pedestrians and bikes was one of the main ideas, and a lot of ideas related to lighting options, the use of sound, music, interactive art. We created a Pinterest page with ideas from all over. We're not the only ones who've taken on a design challenge and used a structure like this to design public art. In the spring, Council took an action in approving a new traffic configuration for the underpass to add more space for pedestrians and bikes and reducing the number of vehicle lanes. And staff submitted for a state grant for the transportation improvements. And we continue to write grant proposals for the art components. To issue a request for proposals and start bringing in ideas from artists, we first need to raise enough money for this prominent area of State Street. It's the gateway to downtown. So that's raising funds is really one of the first steps. And we have a number of conversations underway with arts organizations to make this project happen. All of these projects and ideas that we've covered so far are focused on downtown, and we need to be thinking about, as the mayor mentioned, developing a strategic plan. And there are also efforts to consider as the city as a whole, marketing Santa Barbara's image to encourage businesses to locate here, creating an economic development department or office to lead these efforts, recruiting retail, employee training, and just support of the industries that are already here in Santa Barbara. At the beginning, I mentioned all of the different groups working on improving the downtown experience. And to wrap up, I'd like to focus on nurturing new ideas and building an ecosystem for innovation. Because our world of retail is evolving quickly, and this would be a good time for us to experiment in trying some new ideas. The Architects Institute is planning their annual architect tours the first weekend of October, and we'd like to propose a test weekend for that first weekend of October for the city and different organizations to test out some new concepts. And they can be fairly simple, uplighting some street trees just to see how that would look, a street closure event, giving it a try to see what we learn, some new art installations in public spaces, and just letting groups move forward and coming up with some new approaches. And we have a lot of rules and restrictions in place. With council's support, we could clear the path, if you will, and keep the approval process very simple and making sure safety issues are addressed. But take some steps outside of our comfort zone and outside of our guidelines just to see what things would look like, see what gets support and what doesn't work. We could invite the public, promote it as a test weekend where we're taking a look at some fresh concepts, engage support, see what people think, see what we'd like to do more of. And that would help a lot of us get the ball rolling with some fresh thinking and try out some new things. That concludes my presentation. We have staff from different departments and many organizations represented here today to help answer any questions you may have.
Are there questions for Ms. Johnson before I have Mr. Lombardi from downtown Santa Barbara come up? I don't see any lights, so Mr. Lombardi, come on up. And thank you so much.
I have an entourage. Should I?
Very good. Whenever you're ready.
Okay, Madam Mayor, council members, I'm Dave Lombardi. I'm the interim executive director for downtown Santa Barbara. It's Kate Schwab. She's director of communications and marketing. Ken Opplinger, he's with the director of the Chamber of Commerce. Kathy Jenga-Dyke, she's the director of or president of Visit Santa Barbara. Chris, I don't know your last name. She's with Santa Barbara Association of Retailers. And Brian, Realtors, excuse me. And Brian Johnson, he's with Radius Group. Oh, and Trevor Lodge with Hospitality Santa Barbara. So we're up here because we feel we have a great opportunity to act and work together to revitalize State Street. So many groups of people are passionate about downtown and want to see it restored back to a vibrant and an energetic place where all can come eat, shop, and be entertained. As you saw by Ms. Johnson's list of projects, downtown Santa Barbara is named in many of these as a lead on all these projects. DSB's 1,400 members have the biggest skin in the game. With our knowledge, experience, and majority of stakeholders, we are the entity to take the lead on the public-private partnership to ensure these projects move forward. Ms. Johnson's list covers most of what needs to be done in the downtown, and several other groups have made many other ideas, so there must be a facilitator to bring these ideas together and sort them out strategically. Then we, collectively as a group, need to implement a plan and sort them out strategically so we can move forward. We cannot do this alone. The Chamber, the VSB, HSB, and others are willing to help in numerous ways to expedite this process. We, with the city's involvement, need to come up with a strategic plan with short and long-term objectives with the help of a professional facilitator to figure out the best way to implement these goals, figure out the financials, and then move forward with an economic development position taking the lead. Downtown Santa Barbara will continue to revitalize and market the downtown core via signature events like First Thursday, as you saw there. New endeavors like the NCAA College Cup that's coming to our city in December, and we're planning on having a big family fun event for that. And, of course, other events like the Holiday Parade, which is, of course, the biggest event, and family fun-friendly thing is coming to our city. So, also, for one example, the pop-up project. We are very excited about that. We think that is a great thing to revitalize vacant spaces and kind of just to energize the downtown. We already have a list of over 65 prospective people who want to come down and fill those spaces. The public-private partnership, we feel, is the best way to move forward on this project. The city and the private sector must be all in on this or will not work. State Street has a great foundation. With incremental steps, we can make dramatic change. Santa Barbara is going through a renaissance. This is a perfect time for the important public-private partnership to re-energize State Street. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Anyone else want to say a few words while you're up there? Ms. Schwab, I know you and I are working with Sarah York Rubin on a window dressing program. That's if there's an empty storefront. We have connections to different museums or fine art galleries. Nonprofits that might want to put something in the window. So that's very exciting. We're also working with the farmers market. Sam Edelman couldn't be here today, but he did express his continued support for us getting together with him and bringing family activities to the Tuesday night farmers market. So, Ms. Schwab, thank you so much for the work you're doing. Thanks. Okay.
Madam Mayor?
Yes,
Quick question for
Mr. Rouse.
Ms. Schwab, if I can get you.
Yeah, see, you're popular.
Now that you're
Ms.
on the
Schwab.
spot.
I'm the goddess after all.
Realizing that you have a fair amount of people who would like to do pop-up events and things like that, how is your communication with the various property owners, tenants, whatnot, in the various spaces? You guys have contact with most of those folks?
Well, I have a great many contacts in the real estate broker, commercial real estate, landlord, property owner world. Not everybody. There's a lot of owners and landlords, and so I'm trying to build that database almost every day. And if anybody thinks that I don't have their contact info and they're in that sort of broker owner group, I'd love to have that. I know that there are a lot of out-of-town owners of buildings, but we're trying to build that. And then I reach out to that group on a semi-regular basis and ask questions and, what's open, what's available, what's been leased. Please let me know. And I hear back from a lot of them. So I'm building a relationship there that I'm actually very proud of, and I think it's getting a little stronger.
Thank you.
Thanks. Amy Cooper, will you come on up, please? I really appreciate the initiative of the World Business Academy and you and other people getting together to create the Santa Barbara Retail Task Force. Thank you for your thoughtful letter today with all kinds of ideas. Go ahead, please.
Okay. Amy Cooper, owner of Plum Goods, and also have been asked by the World Business Academy to head up a State Street task force to look at these issues that we're talking about today. And then I became involved with another big group of people, and we put together a list of strategies and solutions that we thought would be useful. I'd love to read them all right now, but it takes more than 2 minutes. But anyone can contact me at amy@plumgoodsstore.com if you want a copy of the document that I sent to City Council and the Mayor yesterday. So that was a document that was a lot of work of putting a lot of different people together in a room, getting ideas from commercial brokers, landlords, retailers, restaurants, hotel owners, city officials, city planners. We were trying to all put our best foot forward in terms of coming up with solutions. I feel like a lot of the time we only hear about the problem, and at this point, all I want to hear is solutions, and I'm sure you guys do too. So it was an honor for me to be able to write that document and submit it to you. And I also was really impressed with Nina's presentation. I'm on board for all of that, especially the test weekend. If I can help with that in any way, let me know. Also, a big supporter of hiring a consultant, because I think we've all discovered that if there's no one looking out for the whole strategic plan, economic development plan, of course, nothing's going to happen, right? We're one of the only cities that doesn't have an economic development department. So to have some kind of plan in place where we're all on the same page, there's so many people who care, as we see today. We all just need to get on the same page and move forward. So I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you for your thoughtful letter, too.
Yeah. Oh, you're welcome.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay.
Emily Allen, are you available? Home for Good is one of our partners. The city partners with this organization dealing with homelessness. And I'm not sure if you were in the room when I announced that Jeff Schaefer is taking over the State Street function.
Yeah, he'll be leading efforts with the business community and bringing stakeholders together in the downtown Santa Barbara area. Just to give you a little more background, Home for Good Santa Barbara County is a program of the Northern Santa Barbara County United Way, but this is a countywide effort, Home for Good, and that includes coordinated outreach that we do in the State Street area. And we do that with United Way staff, with the AmeriCorps members that you've already heard about, and in partnership with county departments like behavioral wellness and public health. And our downtown AmeriCorps team, since September of 2017, has helped house or reunify 12 people and connected 106 people with different supportive services. And as you mentioned, we're working with city staff to convene stakeholders to improve coordination and outreach in the area right now. So the United Way, we're also the lead agency for something that's called coordinated entry. It's a federal requirement that we had to have in place this year. part of doing coordinated entry, which is this No Wrong Door countywide system that engages individuals and families experiencing homelessness, is to do assessments with people. And of the 878 assessments we've done, those assessments indicate that about 43% of individuals and families need supportive housing, and about 43% need what's called rapid rehousing. But we also know that there isn't enough supportive housing or rapid rehousing capacity to meet that need. The good news is, as I know some of you are aware, there are some fairly significant state funds that are available in the next couple of years, and there are processes underway to start planning for how we can most effectively utilize those funds in our community to address what we call our shelter crisis. But we also need to make sure that we don't lose sight of the need to really also focus on those long-term solutions, the creative housing solutions. And for that, we really need to back federal, state, and local measures to develop more supportive housing. And in order to do that, we know that we need everyone in, because I think that, we come from a place of really believing that everybody deserves a safe place to call home. Thank you.
Ms. Allen, we've been hearing a lot of support for some kind of day center for people on our streets, and that's going to be a tall order, finding a location. I think Home for Good is a good place to start that conversation. Yeah. We'll have to build community support
Absolutely.
for it.
And I think that will be part of the discussion. I know some city staff members and others will be participating in this planning process, so to identify what are the unmet needs in the community and how do we meet those needs.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, we'll go to our general public comment then. Michael Holland, you've been waiting since the beginning of the meeting. And I'm going to turn over my time to my associate. To Kevin. Okay, so Kevin Gillies, you'll be followed by Nini Munoz, Anthony Caraccio, and then Robert Elsey. You have 4 minutes, sir. There's a timer there on the... Yeah.
Great. I won't take all of it. In fact, I prepared 4 minutes of comments and decided about a minute would be better, and I'm glad I did.
Okay.
I would have done. Pass them around, read them at your leisure, or not. I'm Kevin Gillies. I'm from the Santa Barbara Acoustic Music Association with Michael Holland. I really appreciate the introductions because now I don't have to go through everything. So you all know it. Nina did a great job. I have a meeting with her on Thursday. I've already met with Eric. I met with Kate yesterday. So we're all on the same page here. The city needs more events. The retail issue is one side of it. The other side of this is more events that appeal to and intermix a broad spectrum of tourists and locals for a healthy community. The more we intermix, the better off that we are. We have to offer what we can't buy on Amazon or see on YouTube. We all know this. We have to provide happenings and experiences for people to engage. The humble guitar is the most versatile and ubiquitous instrument on the earth. It's adaptable to every genre, every style of music. It's accessible to everyone, regardless of social class or wealth. It reflects culture and our values. It's the way we share our stories. We're proposing a low-risk, high-capacity and reward music arts festival utilizing existing businesses and infrastructure to host many genres of music from different cultures. It's like a big Thursday, but with a lot of music. So the model isn't weird at all. It's just coordinating and managing a lot of people. While individuals and grant-making organizations can help bridge financial shortfalls to pull this off, jumping off a cliff without a parachute in the hope of grabbing a few thousand on the way down is really, really tough. And there isn't enough support otherwise to take the risk for someone like me just to jump in and say, okay, we're going to do this. My whole career has been looking for issues and figuring out how to solve them. So the council must step up and lead here. It is up to all of us, but also the council has to allocate significant funding to support and drive at least 3 more destination festivals than we have. And you probably already know this. But I think the keys are, and my 2 main points, rather than each small nonprofit doing their thing, it's much more effective to increase the city's capacity to organize, coordinate, and manage events. And we just heard this. This is economic development. It has to happen under one umbrella. There has to be one person who understands the whole thing. It's really silly for me to go to 16 different nonprofits, all asking for a few thousand here and there. We really need to coordinate this under one idea that we're bringing in festivals that specifically bring business to business downtown. One of those methods is also, just for now, would be to increase downtown Santa Barbara's bandwidth. They don't have enough capacity to actually do everything that's coming to them. So as a temporary measure, before we can get a whole economic committee there, or one person to take a look at this, would be to simply try to support downtown Santa Barbara more, to give them some more resources to do the work that needs to be done. Lastly, Santa Barbara is severely hampered and very limited by not having a downtown civic center. I don't know of any other town that really does not have a place for people to come and gather and get together. I know you've looked at Macy's. That would be an ideal place to do something like that. The Staples store, whatever other place we can imagine downtown. Without a civic center, we're really in tough shape. I have very few places I can go to hold my event. I'm sure it's the same as the other. I guess I used all my 4 minutes anyway.
You talked for 4 minutes.
Anyway, we do have to reinvent what Santa Barbara's about.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you. Ms. Munoz, come on up. You'll be followed by Anthony Caraccio. You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, it's great. I'm following up on him. So I'm a young professional, and I don't want to stay. And what I've noticed here is just an excessive regulation of dance permits and live music. It's just excessive, and it's just stifling for the cultural and economic development of State Street and numerous businesses. It's outdated. It strips of the vitality off of State Street. It affects tourism, limits entertainment, and young professionals like me don't want to stay. We go to an establishment sometimes and they're like, oh, you can't dance here, or you can't have amplified music here. And I read through the municipal code because I wanted to have an event, and I called in, and there's nothing supporting, for anyone to host an event, live music, unless it's, something that the city's organizing, or you have to get a venue. So I think there's room for expansion of those dance permits. And I think that live music and dance music, it's what's going to bring your young professional. You want to talk about what you can't get online. It's that. It's live performances, and there's just not enough of that on State Street, which is why weekends come around, and my husband and I, we pack our bags and leave. We go to like LA or San Francisco or anywhere else where we could find some entertainment. So, yeah, those are my comments regarding that.
Very good. Yep. Thank you. Mr. Caraccio, you'll be followed by Robert Elsey and then Hal Conklin. Did Mr. Caraccio leave? I'll put his in the back in case he comes back. Robert Else or Elsey? How do you say your name?
Who else?
Who else? Okay. Go ahead, please.
Mayor Murillo and City Council members, my name is Robert Else, and I have lived and worked in Santa Barbara for 42 years, since 1976. I strongly support the pedestrian mall concept for State Street as an important part of the downtown revitalization efforts. The vision of people walking, biking, eating, shopping, and relaxing in a car-free promenade is entirely achievable. This inviting environment would naturally draw more locals and tourists alike and would thus contribute to the economic revitalization of the area. The homeless problem can be solved and must be solved, of course, no matter what the ultimate combination of revitalization projects are. I applaud the existing downtown ambassadors, public safety patrols, volunteers in policing, and other programs. We already have beautiful sidewalks, trees, plantings, plazas. We have so much. It's a magical 14 blocks. I love it. We can learn from and improve on the examples of Santa Monica, Boulder, Denver, Burlington, joining them and other cities as proud leaders in people-centered planning. The time is right for us to make State Street an even more beautiful, welcoming, people-centered environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Former Mayor Hal Conklin, you'll be followed by Morgan Benevetto and then Bonnie Raisin. I will ask you to hold your applause. We don't allow applause or booing. They kind of go together sometimes.
Please, no booing.
Yeah, no booing. Mr. Conklin.
Madam Mayor, members of council, it's an honor to see the city take leadership in this role. And Nina, I think what you've proposed, some of the things you've put in this plan is just amazing. Now, I would say, we've lived through this numerous times before. When La Cumbre Plaza came along, downtown was pronounced dead. When Southern Pacific Railroad decided to move everything out of the waterfront, Santa Barbara was pronounced dead. When we built Paseo Nuevo, it was because downtown was pronounced dead. But I'd have to say, of all the things that I've seen happen over the years here, you are proposing the right path. And the one or two things that I think always worked: one, you have to have a comprehensive plan. If you don't have a roadmap about where you're going to go, the public as a whole, let alone the business community, doesn't really know what the path is to get there. And so that is not only just important for just getting the tactics in place and the strategies in place, but it's important for the psychology of the community. The difference between building Hearst Castle up the coast or the Winchester Mystery House in San Jose was that one had a world-renowned architect leading the plan and the rest was just done willy-nilly. We need a world-class plan. People need to know where they're going. They need a roadmap. That's number one. The second is that internally, people continually bump into the walls of City Hall. I know this. I've sat in your seat. I know how difficult this is. But we need somebody who plays the role of an ombudsman, someone who helps people get through the system. And they don't always know how to do that, and they feel frustrated. And there's no reason why you can't have the highest environmental and artistic standards in Santa Barbara and at the same time be efficient. We need people to help get through. So those things I think are good. Get the plan in place, and you'll be moving in the right direction.
Thank you. Morgan Benevetto. Bonnie Raisin will follow you, and then Thomas Byrne. Hello.
Hello. Good afternoon, Mayor Murillo, members of City Council. Morgan Benevetto with People's Self-Help Housing. I'm the Director of Multifamily Housing Development. The mission of my organization is to provide affordable housing, so that's the perspective that I'm coming at this issue with. And I recognize and acknowledge the work that's been taking place studying the AUD ordinance and commend those involved in that effort. As the downtown plans progress, we want to encourage the council to remember that while the housing shortage affects a wide range of people in our community, lower-income households feel those effects the most. So we often lament the lack of affordable housing opportunities in Santa Barbara. And so this is an opportunity to expand housing opportunity for those in lower income brackets. I encourage the City Council and staff to find ways to implement affordable housing opportunity into downtown revitalization plans. And I recognize that the Planning Commission is looking at that now and possibly an inclusionary requirement. So I just want to use one example where our office is located at 26 East Victoria Street, just a half a block off of State, and it houses formerly homeless people. So that's an example of a great-looking building that can be a part of downtown, solve part of the homeless problem. So I hope that as plans go forward and you look at possibly rezoning for housing opportunities, that affordable housing, possibly housing for the homeless is part of that plan. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Raisin?
Good afternoon, council members and Madam Mayor. I'm Bonnie Raisin, and I am so excited. I think this is one of the few times that I have really just wanted to get down on my knees and thank you for making this a significant part of your agenda. You know, I'm several generations Santa Barbaran, and I was recalling those wonderful days after school meeting at Anapamu and State with the Woolworths on the corner. Well, that was a long time ago, and I'm dating myself even mentioning it, but what I really want to be enthusiastic about is the notion of the mom and pop store. That is residential on top and businesses below. And I think that that is possible. And I've heard, I believe other people mentioned today, that it could be possible to increase the height limitation and perhaps put housing on top of some of these retail spaces, which would enhance the vibrancy because people would actually be living there. And even if it were just 1,000 square feet, it would be an incentive, I think, to bring people downtown because the people living there would just generate their own foot traffic and contribute to the ambience. And so the mom and pop store idea, which is residential on top, store below, is a great idea. And I had other things I wanted to say about this, but I can tell you that for me, as a several generational Santa Barbaran, this is a red letter day for me because State Street is our great street. And so move forward, and if anything I can do to help, I'll be happy to do it. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thomas Byrne, are you here? I'll keep a pile in case. Oh, you are. Okay.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, my name is Thomas Byrne, and I've been a business owner on State Street for the last 22 years. And I have never seen so many empty stores as I do at the moment, apart from maybe just after the housing crisis. But I don't believe there's any one particular reason for this. I think it's a combination of reasons. The obvious culprit for the retail space being probably the Amazon effect. I'm in the entertainment business, so decentralization of the downtown State Street with the development of the funk zone did hurt that area. Good for the funk zone, good for the city. But I do believe that there's a radical change needed for the downtown corridor. And before I came in here today, I was actually quite worried. But as a business and property owner on State Street, I'm actually very happy. And I would like to commend Nina and her staff and for all these wonderful proposals I see here in front of me. So I'm actually leaving here today and much more encouraged than when I came in. So I think this is actually, there may be some light at the end of the tunnel.
And your business is the James Joyce?
That's correct.
Just giving you a little shout out there.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Byrne. Thank you. Tina Takaya, come on up. And Richard Yates, you're coming up separately. I'll give you a shout out. Your Opal Restaurant. Okay.
Madam Mayor and City Council members, thank you for having us today. You know, we've been going to many meetings throughout the decades, and some of the issues are still there. And after going through almost 2 years of trying to get a permit, that's not just my story; it's everybody's story. I've talked to hundreds of people, so I love the ideas that are out there, and I think it's really great that we're getting creative and we're trying to create vibrancy again. But I also feel that there's always a cause and effect to everything. And in any successful organization, we always need to have guidelines. And so we have to have specific guidelines. And if the guidelines are followed, it's great. But if you follow the guidelines and you get denied in the building process, that's a hard, pill to swallow. Also, we need, I feel, more oversight in the projects. And besides that, fair and reasonable oversight, and also consequences to those who make mistakes. As we all do in our businesses, we suffer consequences. As I said before, life is cause and effect. And I feel like if we can get the process less arduous, I love the idea of the accelerated program, but if the process is still the same, it doesn't matter if you're in front of the line or not. You're still going the 2 years. So making the process less arduous and, creating or making new businesses not afraid to come in and know that they're going to take 2 years to start their business. You create vibrancy downtown. You create, and with all due respect to the homeless, we do have a lot of facilities, but the people I'm talking about are the vagrants or the aggressive panhandlers that don't, or the mentally ill that don't really want to get the help right now. So how do we do that? If we fill up the empty stores downtown, then there's really no place for them to sit in front of, and therefore, is there a way then to move into facilities or get help, but right now it's an open invitation. So there is a program that is happening in other towns. It's called the Cost of Delay Course, And I'm thinking that it would be really great for our city to go to members of the commission or planning commission to go through that. It shows how much you're costing applicants each time you delay, month after month and into years. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Thanks. Would you like to add anything?
I sure would. Madam Mayor and City Council, I'm Richard Yates, Tina's partner at Opal Restaurant and Bar. I'm very heartened by the comments of Councilmember Rouse and Nina Johnson because something does need to change in SB, and we hope what today sounds like it might be the start of it, so that would be great. As Tina said, there's been many public discussions about the troubled economic vitality of Santa Barbara and many problems identified, all of them valid and important to resolve. But up to now, these discussions haven't really yielded any real solutions, in large part, many of us feel because they never got to the root cause, the declining vibrancy of Santa Barbara's business community and the city's past response to this. Address this first, and many of the other issues will fall in line, including, as Tina was mentioning, I think the homeless the vagrancy issue and the transient nuisance behavior. That will abate if we address the root cause. That's what we feel strongly. So we can all see things from our own perspective, and it may have been difficult for the city in the past to make changes without seeing our side. But now the letter that's been presented by Amy Cooper, and it's been presented to the city, this has a set of clearly defined problems and solutions. I have to say that many city decisions in the past have tended to hamper rather than help our businesses thrive. Just want to add one example from our industry. There is a new policy of restricting operating hours for new alcoholic beverage serving businesses to 12 a.m. rather than the 1:30 or 1:45 industry standard. This is a real disincentive to new entrepreneurs and creates an unfair two-tiered system which benefits existing grandfathered operations and discriminates against the new ones. So it makes it really harder for new businesses to come in and contribute to the growing vitality of the city. So in closing, I'm heartened by what we've heard today and hope that this will lead to real action and real change. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The liquor license issue was on the list that
Okay.
came from the group, so thanks.
Great.
So Ted Ellis, are you here? Did I see you? You're good? Okay, good. Thomas Foley, you're next with Richard Birdie, Nikki Parr from Women's Economic Ventures, and then Mickey Flax. Mr. Foley, is Mr. Birdie giving you his time?
No,
he's coming. Okay,
separately.
so then you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, members of the council, I'm a local property owner downtown and a local business owner downtown. First, I want to compliment the city on improvements in the homeless situation over the last 2 years. It has gotten better. I know because one of my tenants does lawyer referral service, and homeless people can be very aggressive. And when the police come, they're very professional, and they move the people along. So that's a compliment for the efforts that the city's made on that. Next, I would like to complain, and that's about we used to call it Building and Safety or Community Development Department.
Yeah.
All right. The people there are pleasant, they're not rude, and I don't deal with them directly. I deal through architects with them. But there's a real problem getting permits for either tenant improvements on existing buildings or new projects started. And I want to compliment the mayor for reaching out to local business owners shortly after her election, sitting down and asking for ideas. I gave an idea for a project for multifamily housing on State Street, and you were receptive. I recently forwarded you an email yesterday from 2 developers that will not joint venture the project. And these are local experienced multifamily developers because they said it's just too much brain damage, too many delays. So if you're going to try to bring multifamily housing downtown, there needs to be a change in attitude. Next, I have 3 specific points which I think would help the building process go forward. And again, this is not just my personal experience, it's primarily feedback from architects that are working for me and for my clients. First, I think it'd be good if the city planning department hired more experienced planners and relied less on contract planners. During the recession, some of the more experienced planners either were furloughed or took early leave. And then when the recession ended, new people from primarily Cal Poly, they're very smart, but they don't have a lot of experience. And then you add to that these contract planners that don't have the same incentive to process things efficiently. Second, I think it would be a very good idea on the Historical Landmarks Committee if you, instead of just appointing people that want to volunteer because they love Santa Barbara, also appoint some property owners, building owners that realize what costs are and efficiencies. And third, I noticed in your very well-prepared current downtown revitalization plan, one of the ideas referenced on page 3 is penalty for long-term vacancies on State Street. I think that's a very poor idea because there are a number of reasons, some very legitimate, why there are vacancies. And I've discussed that with Councilman Hart, and we don't have time to get into that today, but I think that's something you should really consult with your city council on, your city attorney on before you adopt such a thing.
Mr. Foley, thank you for your ideas. I'm going to close we're not going to take any more slips because we have a whole lot and we have a land use appeal that's after this item. So, Mr. Birdie, did you want to come out? You'll be followed by Nikki Parr. One last one? All right. And Mickey Flax after that. So, okay, Mr. Birdie.
When the results of our last city elections came in, I was like shocked. I didn't know if I'd like it. But I've met the mayor, who I am different than. I'm an entrepreneur, a risk taker. She's an administrator. She does good things. She's got a nice personality. She was out here to please everybody from her heart. So I thank you. I know Randy. I've shaken hands with a few of you. Some of you I've never met. But thank you for your service. It's a hard job. My concerns are the time it takes to get things done. I'm now 81, going on 82. I don't have time to even think about building something in Santa Barbara. Okay? I just don't. I will not enjoy any results. I'll never taste the fruit of my efforts. A lot of people don't want to come here because they can go someplace else and get to their fruit a lot faster. You know, this is the pretty lady that nobody wants to date. And, you know, it's too high a price. It's a fatal attraction. We have to change those things. And I'll have to look to the city administrator. You're the boss. You set the pace. You answer to these people and they give you guidelines, but you're in charge. And the people function under you. And I got to tell you, from my point of view, I'm very unhappy. Very unhappy. I have a tenant that took a space in Lower State Street, 600 block. I gave him a year's free rent to go through the process. That started in January of 2017. He's hoping to open on August the 15th of this year. Hoping. He spent $1.5 million on 2,000 square feet. He came to me, he says, you know, I should never have rented. I should have gone someplace else and built a building that I'll own. And I said, yeah, I agree with you. Now, some people think that having property is being in paradise. It ain't. You have a lot of responsibilities. When my properties go vacant, your taxes do not go down. Instead, you talk about, let's raise commercial taxes. Who's going to pay those?
Mr. Birdie, can you wrap up your
I'll
comments?
wrap it up, but who's going to pay them? The tenants. Anything you put on any of us, it's going to go back to the population. We have to get more efficient. You've made me lose my thought. But anyhow, I'll say we live in a pretty lady's paradise, but I don't want to live here anymore, and if I could, I would move. Okay? And I live in a beautiful home in Hope Ranch. I enjoy a great deal of success, but I'm just like waiting to die because it's too hard to do anything productive. It's just too hard. And I applaud you for your efforts, but I got to tell you, from the history, I think it's talk. Okay. You talk the talk, but you don't walk the walk. So Thank you, and
No,
I hope
thank
you do.
you.
I hope you embarrass me with success.
Us too. Okay. Nikki Parr. Ms. Parr, you'll be followed by Mickey Flax, Kristen Sagastum, and Tammy Hughes. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. That's a hard act to follow. Madam Mayor, council members, my name is Nikki Parr. I'm the Business Recovery Specialist for Women's Economic Ventures, more commonly known as WEAVE. WEAVE is a locally based non-profit organization supporting small business owners through the provision of comprehensive entrepreneurial training programs, coaching, and small business startup and expansion loans. WEAVE has participated extensively in the community workshops and meetings that have taken place over the past 6 months on restoring economic vitality and vibrancy in our downtown corridor. In May, WEAVE helped organize a workshop which brought together community leaders, property developers, landlords, and small business owners to discuss State Street revitalization ideas. WEAVE is also driving the Love Your Local Business campaign, which will be launching this autumn and will encourage consumers to shop at local businesses rather than online. WEAVE is fully supportive of the initiatives proposed by Nina Johnson's team to create opportunities for small business owners and local businesses along the State Street corridor, and specifically for the pop-up retail models in the vacant spaces. We have already committed to hosting an information session for small business owners who may be interested in learning more about the pop-up retail model, and I'm happy to answer any questions relating to that.
I don't see any questions, but thank you for everything that Women's Economic Ventures has been doing.
Thank you.
Ms. Parr, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Mickey Flax, come on up. Christian Sagastum, please be ready to come up.
My name is Mickey Flax. I've lived here for 50 years, almost. I want to agree, which I haven't usually done, with Bonnie Raisin, that the best thing for retail downtown is to have more people downtown. And the best way to have more people downtown is to have housing downtown. And one of the cheaper ways to have housing downtown is to take the land cost out of it. The city parking lots are owned by the city of Santa Barbara. They can be decked, and so that we wouldn't lose any parking. On top of the deck can be built 1 or 2 stories. That can be housing that brings people downtown, takes the cost of land out of the cost of building that housing, and the economics of building on a deck have improved greatly, so that even the cost of building could be less than starting fresh. Somebody said that it's too high a price to live here in Santa Barbara. It's too high a price for local workers to live here in Santa Barbara, and 30,000 of them each day don't. Those 30,000, or some of them at least, could be living downtown, shopping at local stores, and helping to revitalize State Street. More housing on or near State Street equals more people, more customers, more sales, more taxes, more city funds for low and moderate income housing. So even market rate housing downtown is a benefit to all, and the housing incentive that could be provided to build that housing is free land. We have it, let's use it. Thank you.
Thanks. Christian, are you still here? You'll be followed by Tammy Hughes and then Ronaldo Brudico. Oh, that wasn't Christian. Oh. Okay. Ms. Hughes, thanks.
Madam Mayor, council members, thank you so much for this meeting today. I want to thank Nina Johnson for a really dynamic presentation. I'm here as a property owner, not only in the Funk Zone, but on State Street. This isn't the first time you've heard how challenging it is. I came up to speak today because I think oftentimes in Santa Barbara that landlords get a terrible rap. And I love that we're hearing so much about collaboration and teamwork, because we really do need the council to take a lead position as our city administrator and our building and planning department. Sorry, I'm so nervous. And, you know, for us to try to tenant a space is so challenging. It takes years and years. And there's no time value of money for the people that we're working with. And that mentality, it must change, because when our spaces are empty while we wait for permits for 3 years, we're paying mortgages, we're paying taxes and insurance and all of the costs that Mr. Birdie referred to. And I would like to think that we can collaborate. We have so many smart people, not only on the council, but in our planning, development, and city administration. And as you saw, 100 people signing a document, business owners, landowners, and there's clearly a desire to work together. So we need your leadership to step forward and put that into place. So it's maybe even a forced partnership in the beginning. But anyway, I have no doubt that we can create a vibrant environment. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Is Ronaldo here? Ronaldo Brutico? Ms. Cooper already spoke. Dave Hopkins from Doctors Without Walls. You'll be followed by Steve Americaner.
Madam Mayor, City Council, I just want to say thank you for going. And, you know, when I came in, I have a strong passion for the homeless community. And with Doctors Without Walls, we go out and we do rounds on Tuesday mornings and check up on a lot of people that need wound care and whatnot, and then we can address them to either come to the clinics on Wednesday or Thursday or provide services for them to get them help. But about an hour ago, a gentleman, Mr. Baxter, showed a film of just one of the regulars that's on Haley Street, and then we talked about a day center that, or you mentioned Emily, and I know for a fact that it's you know, it's an eyesore seeing the homeless population, you know, with addiction, disease of addiction, being on Haley Street, Milpas, State Street, wherever. And every time we turn the corner, and, you know, and this goes to the people that are paying taxes and that voted to get the, you know, the benches off of State Street and clean out the ramps, but the homeless have no place to go. And every time we turn the corner and we see somebody on Haley Street, and then all of a sudden it's a call down to Milpas Street, or a call back up to Goleta, or over to the emergency room because somebody's outside of the emergency room. And instead of going to all these different places, and I know in San Francisco they decided to do it in 2016, and they opened up a place like the Warming Center or Day Center, where it cut down on the utilization by 68%, and it cut down on the drinking by 40% of the individuals that were going there. So it's just a win-win situation of having a place for these people to go to, and the police can go there, the social services can go there, the nurses, Doctors Without Walls, and AmeriCorps Housing, and helping these people. And we've never tried it in Santa Barbara. I've got the plan from 1983 of cleaning up Lower State Street, and it hasn't changed. And I'm just wondering if this would be a different route of having a day center where we can provide the services there.
Thank you, Mr. Hopkins. I'm going to ask Dr. Protowski to come up. Mr. Americaner, can you wait for one speaker? He's also from Doctors Without Walls. I thought we'd have some continuity. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I promise I won't be too long. And thank you to our councilman. And also thank you to everyone here, at least businesses that are represented. As someone who lives in Santa Barbara with my family, I love and visit many of these businesses here. As far as I'm the physician and the medical director for Doctors Without Walls, Santa Barbara Street Medicine. We provide free medical care to the homeless and working poor. And what we'd like, there's been a lot of discussion about homelessness. we would love the city's continued support for interagency collaboration, specifically with access to mental health services and access to substance abuse treatment. And I think we all want the same thing, and there are a lot of amazing city, county, and nonprofit organizations that are working together, and your continued support and leadership is important to making that happen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mayor Connor.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, thank you for holding this hearing this afternoon. My name is Steve Americana. I've worked downtown on State Street for the last 25 years. We go to the movies every Friday night downtown. We have seen everything over the last 25 years. And I have two specific ideas I'd like to suggest to you. First, having to do with Nina's list of suggestions. Those are excellent ideas. Nearly all of them deserve to be certainly studied, and many of them deserve to be implemented. At the same time, I believe a much bolder approach is warranted, given the fact that our retail problem is not going to go away. Every study tells us that. And what Mr. Else said, I agree with, and that is, I think it's time to take a very hard look at the idea of creating a pedestrian mall downtown. Replace the cars, replace the vehicles with people. But that's only step one. Step two is to then allow a significant expansion of restaurants and entertainment venues along that street, with lights, with music, whether it's street musicians or otherwise. Create an entertainment zone for 8, 10, 12 blocks. I know it sounds bold, I know it sounds aggressive, but I believe that is what will turn this around. We have the most wonderful natural asset, perhaps in the world, and that is our weather. We can have outdoor dining, outdoor music, outdoor entertainment almost year-round. Mm-hmm. And with heat lamps and other kinds of protections, it can be year-round. There isn't another city in the country, I believe, that has that asset. And yet Boulder and Burlington and Denver, other places where they get snow and a lot of rain, also have this downtown pedestrian mall, and it's very successful. The second issue is one of process. I will finish it up.
Please.
And that is, we have so burdened our businesses, the restaurants and others, that we just make it very difficult for anybody to invest. And it's not just time, it's uncertainty. It's having to make an investment not knowing if it's ever going to come out at the other end and produce any profit or income for the business. The solution to uncertainty is clarity. Have rules, zoning rules, health department rules, whatever rules there are, that are clear, specific, and understandable to anybody who can read. Okay. Reduce the amount of discretion that is exercised in deciding whether or not a business is going to open and what requirements are going to be subject to, and put a time limit on it. Say to the people who have to administer the rules, you have X weeks, X months to get this done.
Thanks
and
so
give
much.
them their permit.
That was in the list of ideas that came from the business community, so thanks.
Good.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Ray Mahboub, you're next. Brian Cornell, are you still in the building? I know you. Okay, so you'll be after Ray. Alexander Agoropoulos. Go ahead.
Madam Mayor, council members, thank you for your time, and thank you, Randy and Kathy, for putting this on the agenda and prioritizing local interests, not just national interests. And I also wanted to thank Nina Johnson. She did a great job in providing this presentation and great ideas, and as well as getting that $900,000 grant money from the state. That's going to help our city a lot, enforcing the no smoking. What I wanted to talk about is culture. Right now, it really seems like there's us against you and you against us, and I really think that we should change that and work together as a team, as a partnership to progress. Because if we win, city government wins. It's a partnership. Just keep that in mind. Amy Cooper put together a great list, that complements a lot of the stuff that Nina put together. I would look at 10 of the items that are on that list and submit it to her office to try to get implemented ASAP as soon as possible, because we've been having conversations for years, sharing ideas, workshops, meetings, and we're just keep kicking the can down the road. I think enough is enough, and we need to do something. And these are the list of items are low-lying fruit that don't cost that much money. They're easy fixes, and that's a short-term goal. There's a long-term plan as well on that list. We can address that later, but I'd really like to see today to accomplish getting 10 of those items off that list, out to Nina's desk, and get implemented as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian Cornell, you'll be followed by Alexander Agaropoulos, and then Bob Stout.
Madam Mayor, members of council, thank you. The list is comprehensive and it's really good. I'm worried that we, as some speakers have addressed, that we don't have this list prioritized and that we really don't have someone in charge. So I'm going to go back to when the AIA did our workshop. That has been 10 months. 9 months ago, we came to council with very specific recommendations. One, we said allow for higher density housing in the State Street corridor from Anacapa to Chapala. That's something that can be done immediately, and I want to encourage. It's on your list. 10 months, almost a year have gone by, and we've done nothing about it. And to me, it's very simple. Just allow more density and allow units to be built without parking. I've got projects right now where people want to convert the second floor of their buildings downtown, and they have to go through a modification process in order to do that because they don't have parking. So that's something that I believe Planning Commission and the City Council can act on. The other thing we suggested in our recommendations was the importance of some kind of a task force. I'm a little worried that we need, there's been discussion about consultants. I don't know if a consultant is the right answer, but I do believe we need some comprehensive group that is in charge of this effort and can prioritize these items and come to you with funding requests or whatever. I don't know if you folks can do it alone. I don't know if it takes a consultant, but I think we need some way to take this list now and really put teeth into it by having some kind of an ombudsman, a czar, a task force, something. And let's get on with these things because there's a great group of ideas. And Mayor and Randy, I want to thank you for initiating this and keep it going. But let's move on the housing now. There's no reason to delay. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Argyropoulos, and then Mr. Stout after you.
Hey, Madam Mayor and council members, thank you for having me and thank you for the presentation. All the ideas today are excellent. I was born here and 30 years old and call this my home, but 6 years ago after UCSB, I moved to Los Angeles because I felt that there was no place for me as a 24-year-old in this community. And, my family are real estate owners and business owners in town. We have properties in the Funk Zone and on State Street, and we also have properties in Santa Monica on the Promenade and in Venice Beach, where I live. And what I have learned from working in real estate in these places is that population density is key to keeping vibrance in these areas. I think the ideas to close State Street down are great. It worked in Santa Monica on the Promenade. And I think we should also stop blaming the homeless population because there are many more homeless people in Venice Beach and that live out just everywhere in tents. And it doesn't seem to stop tourists from coming, and they're not afraid of it. And I mean, it is a problem, but I think we need to focus on getting people downtown, living downtown. And I think we should also, the development of downtown, it needs to be fast tracked. We need to prioritize this area. Those are my main points. My third point is it's in particular, we've had a lot of people talk about events and dancing and all this stuff. I actually am a part of a music festival I'm hosting in September at Live Oak. And we have a moratorium on ticketed events at the parks in Santa Barbara, which has been put in place after the West Beach Festival, which I think it's been like 10 years since that happened. And I really think it's time to lift that and to start allowing people to start hosting events and applying to have events, and hopefully locals, because I know like Santa Barbara Bowl is contracted by Golden Voice. Before that, it was Nederlander, and these are like national corporations for entertainment. It would be great to see some locals doing events for locals.
Thank you so much.
Great, thank you.
Mr. Stout, you'll be followed by Andy Erickson, Robert Perry, Shannon Batchev.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. We've heard some great talks today. I think we've got Channel 17 is going to be excellent television. I'd like to say, Mr. Birdie, I think you definitely got something to live for. You've got a TV show in the works. So. Okay, I could jump around. I'm Bob Stout. I own the Wildcat Lounge and Little Kitchen Restaurant. I started my first restaurant in the Sojourner in 1978. So I've been here about 40 years. I've been on or near State Street all that time. I don't think State Street's broken, but I think it's damaged, and I think it's great that you're all seemingly put together to really address this. I do think it's going to take some focus, and I do agree with Brian Cornell that, or someone else, Ray Maboob, that Amy's list, take those 10 and add it to Nina's 50, because there's some really good work there and some good ideas. Nina, thank you for putting this comprehensive list together. As chair of the Downtown Santa Barbara Safety Committee, there's a couple I just want to say, please keep the ambassador program, double it, make sure there are 4 people, not just 2. It's a great program. We've been asking for more presence. I hope the police department uses some of that money to actually be down there too, because that's huge. Couple specifics, because we've heard a lot of general here. The trees, especially in the 400 or 500 block. Trim the trees and increase the lighting so the light comes down, not just shines up. I believe that we can, by implementing incremental changes, we can make a substantial, even a dramatic difference. And finally, I would like to address, not as the chair of the safety committee, but just as somebody who's built 4 or 5 restaurants and probably would not try it again, that it's a horrible process. It's really difficult, and it can be streamlined. One of our members told me he wanted to build a trash enclosure that would cost $10,000, and it was going to cost $75,000 in planning. So if your basic budget for a restaurant is $250,000, you can take that times 7. So something needs to be done. I think over at the building department, they can have more of a working together with the clients. It's very important. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Come on up, Mr. Erickson. Robert Perry after you, Shannon Batchev, Barry Ramis, and Jim Cannell. Welcome.
Hi, Mayor and Council. Thanks for having this meeting. Love it. State Street needs some help. I think that it's well within the capabilities of Santa Barbara to do it. I want to talk about something that nobody's bringing up, and maybe that's because it's a crazy idea, maybe it's not. I'm a local business owner. I'm like a tech entrepreneur. I came here to work for Digital Instruments in '95, and we were down on Montecito Street with maybe like 50, 60 employees, and it was about a $50 million, no, it'd be more employees than that, 80 or 90 employees, and about a $50 million business. I didn't own any of it. That was Virgil Elings. He's on parks and buildings and stuff. But anyway, when it grew to the point where it couldn't fit anymore, he looked around and moved to Goleta. And that was a $50 million business. It's grown a little bit since then. That was 20 years ago. That's $1 billion of stuff. Now, not all of that gets spent in town, but man, we went to lunch, we went to dinner, we went to everything. So that's a business in town. And I think that's like the other leg of the stool. And the same story with a recent company, Appeal. They just moved out of my building. That's why I know about this. We tried desperately to find enough contiguous space for them. And there just isn't any. There isn't. I have a couple of 10,000-foot buildings, and it wasn't enough for them even close. But you have a whole bunch of vacant space along State Street, and I kind of feel like Macy's. That would have been awesome if we could have rented that for them. They'd have taken they'd have consumed the whole building and would have been very happy with it. And they're an R&D place. Everybody makes great salary. They don't think about what they pay for lunch. They would have dinners there. They work late hours, and it's kind of like a triple benefit because it They spend money, they consume the space, which puts more pressure on the vacant retail to get consumed by retail. So I think it's a good connection.
So bring tech companies downtown into the empty spaces if
UCSB,
there's enough space.
You have UCSB, they start businesses here, they turn into great business. I could tell you about 50 businesses that are UCSB spinoffs, but they can't stay because there's not enough space, not enough industrial, scientific office space, and preferably right downtown because, man, that's just the best.
All right. Thanks, Mr. Erickson. Mr. Perry, come on up. At the World Business Academy today.
Madam Mayor, council members, I'd like to also commend Nina Johnson on her presentation and her compilation of present and pending projects. That's an excellent reference point, and I want to acknowledge Amy Cooper for her efforts in developing 25 specific action items that can be deployed immediately to start the planning process and to shape it. These are all great ideas, but I agree with Hal Conklin and others that it has to be part of a central plan, a strategic plan with a vision, with a vision of an end goal of what downtown will look like. And I think that vision has to include the closure of State Street to the vehicular traffic. I lived and worked in Santa Monica from the mid-1980s into the 1990s. And in the 1980s, Santa Monica at 3rd Street was a ghost town. I mean, there was nothing. It was absolutely desolate. And they closed 3rd Street to traffic. It opened up cross traffic between storefronts. They started holding community events, and within 5 to 10 years, it was a booming center of commerce. And so I really think that downtown Santa Barbara can also benefit from that kind of dynamic. So I really feel that the Anacapa-Chapala transit corridors, it works as a system. Let's close the circle and shut down Santa Barbara and turn it into a shared space for the community. I also believe that good signage is helpful, but I think we need to leverage the technology we all have in our pockets, and that an integrated phone app that informs not only tourists but residents of what's happening and can direct them to that place would be very helpful. Thank you.
Thanks. Shannon Batchev, followed by Barry Remus, Jim Cannell, Hillary Blackerby, Ed Franz. We have quite a few slips, folks. Thanks for sitting here through this. So, Ms. Batchev.
Madam Mayor, members of City Council, hello, I'm Shannon Batchev, Executive Administrator for the Coastal Housing Coalition. The Coastal Housing Coalition is a nonprofit organization and the voice of local employers and employees in support of workforce housing. We believe the lack of available affordable housing in close proximity to jobs is adversely affecting our region's economy, environment, and civic life, all of which will worsen if we don't address this crucial problem. The Coastal Housing Coalition applauds City Council for their efforts to revitalize State Street and feels that incorporating housing for our local workforce is extremely important. To create a vibrant downtown, we need more locals living downtown close to jobs and services. The Coalition's Board of Directors is interested in coordinating a study to see how housing can be incorporated into the revitalization efforts. While the exact scope of the study has not been determined, we are currently in discussion with the Urban Land Institute to discuss processing and timing information for their technical assistance panel program. The CHC would likely support recommendations to change planning codes to allow more development downtown, allowing higher density, and allowing off-site parking in residential lots. We would like to thank the Council for its time and consideration on this topic. Together, we can create a vibrant downtown community where locals can live, work, shop, and play. Thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Remus? Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and council members. Well, after the wonderful, fantastic idea from Steve, Robert, and Robert, what else could I say? Well, I can think of something. Did everybody get that? Tough room. So I'm Barry Remison. I'm from the Coalition for Sustainable Transportation, otherwise known as COAST. And there's some fantastic ideas that are abound in this room, and I'm not going to detail them because my 2 minutes will be over. So, but what it all boils down to, what I really want to say is, what I want to ask you is, what's it going to take to revitalize State Street and revitalize our downtown hub, our corridor? There's one word. It's people. And so the Coalition for Sustainable Transportation is embarking upon our Walk Bike State campaign and our initiative to help us break out of the box and to really take that leap, to really take the model that's been shown and proven to work in other cities like Boulder, Denver. We've seen Santa Monica and in Vermont, et cetera. And to not close State Street, because we don't want to look at it that way. We don't want to close State Street. We want to restrict vehicle traffic, to open it up to people movement, to people interaction, to strolling, to meandering, to see parklets, and even perhaps in the sections where there is vehicle traffic, maybe let's try a pedestrian scramble to really engage the interaction and the people environment that could thrive here in Santa Barbara. The mixed use that Mickey Flax has been talking about, really, again, to bring more people to the downtown corridor. And we also want to highlight the AIA charrette that was done in October of last year. Coast puts on monthly free walking tours that are called Walking Wednesdays. And as a matter of fact, this edition, next Wednesday on the 22nd at 5:30 in front of the Arlington Theater, we're going to highlight one of those teams from the AIA charrette that can talk about how what their thoughts were for invigorating the State Street corridor. All right? We hope you'll join us. Thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Cannell, are you here? He left? In case he comes back, I'll set it aside. Hillary, oh. And I'm sorry, I don't know your face, or I would have recognized you.
That one?
Oh.
This face wants to join me, and I want him to say just a couple things.
5 seconds.
One thing.
The Faulding is a problem. It's the source of the homeless problem on Lower State Street, and I'll donate $100,000 towards a program that'll move the people from that into facility out by the county jail. There's plenty of land out there, and you could have a facility that not only houses them but helps them. And that's what I'll do.
All right, you're done.
Okay.
Please.
Wow, thank you, sir.
And I will join him as I have the building right next to the Faulding that on a weekly basis I got to take pizza slices off the windows and whatnot. Had somehow make it over from the Faulding to my building. But I want to thank you for having this meeting. I've been to several meetings. Unfortunately, my experience has been that I don't want you guys in my business. You guys have a certain job to do. The job is to administer the city, make it architecturally attractive, make it safe, and allow businesses and people to facilitate growth. And when I say growth, I'm talking about the growth of State Street. When I say safety, get rid of the homeless, get rid of the benches. We talked about this for a year. Nothing has been done. And here we go again, 50 beautiful points. We can't do 50 beautiful points. We can't even administer removing a bench. How can we do 50 line items in a massive plan? City, stay out of our business, focus on what a city does. Make it architecturally attractive. Eliminate the hurdles that prevent us from growing and make us look more vibrant. Reduce the amount of times for permits to 90 days. Period. I mean, don't draw. I have vacancies on State Street, but I have tenants to occupy them, but they're in a meander of tenant improvements and costs that cost them thousands and thousands of dollars. And here I am 8 months later. You have no taxes. I have no rent. The tenant has no income. Why? Because of the delay in the building process. I want the city to stay out of my business, stay out, do what you're supposed to do, and focus your energy on that, and I think we'll all do well. Private sector has the ability to manage itself. Let it do it. Allow us to grow, allow us to develop, allow us to improve our buildings in an efficient manner so that we can attract the tenants that need to be here in Santa Barbara. That's it.
Very good. Hillary Blackerby, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Council members. Great to be with you. My name is Hillary Blackerby. I'm the Marketing and Community Relations Manager for Santa Barbara MTD. Excuse me, your transit district. We've been a proud downtown partner for a very long time with the Downtown and Waterfront Shuttle for over 25 years. And that was a big part of revitalizing with the building of the parking structures and all that. And we're happy to continue to be a partner in that way. We sponsored and participated in the Shred everyone's referenced, which was really good to get the creative juices flowing. We're excited to be a part of that. And we have excellent working relationships with city staff and with the downtown organization. I want to be part of continued prosperity and a solution for what ails us. One of the things that Nina mentioned is something that we're working on with city staff and also with marketing help from Visit Santa Barbara, but the idea of an unlimited day pass for the downtown and waterfront shuttles. They're actually being printed as we speak, printed and encoded, the passes. They'll be $1. So you can ride unlimited in any direction on the downtown and waterfront shuttle when those are out. And we are going to be making sure that not just visitors, hotels have already agreed they're gonna sell them or even give them away to guests. Museums have mentioned that as well, and that's something we're going to be working on. But we really want to get locals down, and we'll be doing a lot of marketing to get people back to State Street. We have such a great reputation as a city. If you go anywhere in the world and you say where you're from, people say, ooh, Santa Barbara, it's beautiful there. We agree. We know it's true, and we want to convince locals that it's still the case. But there's lots of work to do, and we're excited to be a partner with the city.
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
one of our most valued partners, Ms. Blackerby. Thanks. Ed France, you're next. Jose Arturo Gallegos will be followed by Jason Yeager. And the final speaker will be Jan Bonnier, unless some of these other folks have come back. Mr. France, 2 minutes.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Rouse, thank you for bringing this item. Thank you, Council. Thank you, staff. Let me start with a brief book recommendation. Our Towns. These folks looked at 100, Jim and Deb Fallows looked at 100 different cities across the U.S. The secret sauce of successful cities and towns is basically what we have here. An engaged, non-polarized community and a city that's willing to be proactive and hold vision. So thank you. State is the heart of our downtown, and locals need to fall in love with it again. I think that part of that is to integrate our waterfront, our funk zone, and our greater downtown districts through improved, eased access throughout, but especially on State. Here is one way. A well-planned, well-managed bike share program. I would like to pledge our community organization, the Santa Barbara Bicycle Coalition, to help engage and listen to any community stakeholders that want to be part of a process to engage with the city, and thank you for starting in earnest work towards a bike share program that would work for our city. Will scooters be a part of that? We might find out. There's a scooter workshop. Love to hear about that, which is later this week. But I also have another quick idea. I've heard a lot about bikes and peds and a promenade on State Street. Here's a bite-sized test case pop-up idea. What about a cycle track that would bring bikes and peds in the same way that people ride on the waterfront, on the path there, but also allow for buses and shuttles and land sharks and people who just want to cruise in a vehicle as well? Just as a step, a test case. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gallegos, come on up. Ms. Kaufman, I did find your slip, so we have more speakers than I thought. And Mr. Miranda's giving you his 2 minutes, but if you could stick to 2, we've had a long public comment.
I'll try to keep it as short as I can, but I'll definitely keep it under 4 for sure, or try my best. Okay. Since the 80s, local residents really stopped coming into the downtown area. And I remember this since the 80s. And the city has tried to rely on tourism, but you can't rely on that. I am for revitalizing State Street. I'm a little iffy of turning these empty storefronts into apartments, condos, whatever you want to call it. Again, it's going to be like a mini Manhattan. I'm not talking Manhattan Beach, California. I'm talking Manhattan, New York. Again, things go up. If that's going to get done, it has to be affordable. Affordable for those in the service industry, not, $1,500 for a little studio or $2,000 for one bedroom, $3,000 plus for a two bedroom. Nothing like that. Closing down State Street, I'm not for that. I think State Street should be open because what's going to have, you're going to have traffic congestion on Anacapa, Santa Barbara, Chapala, De La Vina, Bass Street, Castillo. It's just going to be congested, and other side streets. On the homeless issues, again, it's been a big major problem, as we all know. Michael Miranda, who's donating his 2 minutes to me, was dismissed from PATH last year on fabricated lies. Where's AmeriCorps? Where is AmeriCorps to help out Michael Miranda to get into housing? This past Sunday, Councilmember Gutierrez, he and I, we got together, went to Pershing Park to show him, what's all about the feeding. Then we went to a meeting with drug recovery alcohol. That was a big, huge meeting with all the local recovery programs at the marina. And then we went to Starbucks to speak to Michael. There was a lady there that Councilmember Gutierrez met that Michael and I know. She is homeless, been homeless for the longest time, a nice gal, health issues. She told us that she went to AmeriCorps, tried to get AmeriCorps to help her. Man, there's just nothing we can do. Again, they're going around these numbers, we do this, we do that, da-da-da. So where's AmeriCorps to help up this lady? And not only her, and not only Michael, many, many others in their situations. We need to start focusing on senior citizens and those with disabilities because there's so many of them out there, and they're not getting the help that they need. They're not. So,
thank you. Thanks so much. Mr. Yeager, Jan Van Yurt, Max Golding, Eve Sanford, Joanna Kaufman, and then David Watkins will be the final speaker. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Mayor and council members, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak here today. I think it's really good. I know I've spoke to Mr. Dominguez and Ms. Maria. We've had private conversations regarding the safety of Santa Barbara. And I think it'd be good for you to hear, I'm a commercial real estate broker a lot of my colleagues are here, that we spent a lot of time with them, touring them, and kind of give you a top three to kind of add to Nina's great report that I thought was very well done. So thank you, Nina, for that. First and foremost, safety is on the forefront. That is the number one item that is brought to me from tenants. And a simple way to implement this immediately is just to give all the State Street owners the adjacent land or a security easement so they could privately police the area in front of their building. I think you'll find very quickly that businesses and property owners can actually, with private security, clean up what's in front of them and address the homeless as well. Number two, I really like what Jim Cannell said about the cap on permits. I think 90 days is an excellent recommendation, and that could be a great carrot that we can use when we're talking to new tenants of why should they come to Santa Barbara. And we could say, well, there's a cap on the time for the permits. I think you'll see an immediate response on that. And lastly, Brian Cornell mentioned the residential apartments not having any parking. We need people downtown, and by removing the parking requirement, I think you'll find developers will have an incentive to build, because in the current economic climate, the cost with construction and the way the AUD program is set up, it's very difficult to make economic sense of it. So I think the zero parking should be something to implement. And That's pretty much it. I also I know that there's Amy Cooper had her list that she distributed to everybody. I would please urge you to implement 10 items immediately as well. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Von Yurt. Good. I like it.
Did I get extra 10 seconds? Okay. Madam Mayor, dear council members, thank you very much for your time today. Thank you, Nina, for this amazing report. It has to come from you. I think you heard enough. I will be so over it, hearing us complain, the city complain, seeing every day the same things over and over. If you want change in your heart and you want to do something to your city, which I dearly love for over 20 years, you have to implement items today. You could start with Nina's proposal to try 4 days. I mean, what is the worst can happen, right? The world could come to an end. I really believe that if you start not us hearing or telling you stories and listening, which you're really good because you're politicians, if you really want to tackle this, start today, implement those items, we ask you to. One item is really dear to me, and those are the homeless. And trust me, I've seen everything. I was harassed yesterday on State Street while doing work. And I feel so sad for those people that we allow them to live worse than any animal. We take care of strained animals in this town. You don't see cats and dogs walking around laying on the street. We see it with humans. And this has to come from us. We pay taxes, and we have a job to do. We have to take care of the ones who can take care of themselves. We have to provide beds.
Okay. Please continue. You have
yes,
seven
it is
seconds.
really important. There are not enough beds in this town to house homeless. The police will put them in prison. This is not the right solution for them. They don't care. They need help. They need a caseworker one by one. They need help, physically, mentally, help, a bed where they feel proud of themselves again, where they get showers. And this can be established by the city. You need to release funding. You can work with the county on this. It's really important. It can't wait any longer. We let those people live, and it is up to you to change that. If you walk up State Street and you are okay with it,
No,
that people are
we
passed
aren't
out.
okay with it. And your time is up. Max
you.
Golding, you're up
Thank you.
next. Yeah, thanks. Eve Sanford, you're after him. Go ahead, please.
Hello. I just wanted to say that I agree with the proposal to close cars off of Lower State Street. I think it would be a great, really fun idea, but to also consider easing off of some of the policing practices, like the enforcement of the sitting and laying stuff, because my vision of how cool it could be if we actually implemented that would be people sitting and laying and juggling and, I don't know, just doing all kinds of like creative weirdo things that I think in other cities we see a lot more of, and it doesn't get policed so much. And the reason I say that is years ago, I had a little cardboard box that said "Poems, Your Topic, Your Price," and I had it on the back of my my bicycle on my milk crate, and I would have my typewriter in the milk crate, and I would bike down to either State Street or the farmer's market when I had some free time, and I would write poems for people, and they would give me a couple bucks. And I didn't make a whole lot of money, but the creative weirdo aspect of it was really fun. But the reason I stopped doing it was once the police started kind of enforcing the no sitting on State Street law that I guess had been there for a while, it became pretty demoralizing. And I could have found other ways around it, but I really enjoyed biking there and having the setup that I did because I really enjoyed not driving to the places I went to do it. So there really does need to be more incentivization of like carless transportation options and just less, criminalization of people doing normal stuff on the ground. Especially because, as others have pointed out, the homeless people that are doing that really have nowhere else to go. And I did want to bring up one last point, which was this might just be my ignorance of why this point hasn't been brought up, but there's been a lot of kind of complaints about like regulations that make it really hard for businesses to start opening up businesses on State Street. But I'm really curious about like the owners of those spaces and why they charge so much, and also like how many of them live in Santa Barbara versus live, just wherever else, like large national or international like realty
Thank
companies
you.
and stuff like that. Because
Thanks.
why are the prices so high? So thanks.
Thanks. Ms. Sanford, you'll be followed by Joanna Kaufman and then David Watkins.
Good afternoon. Eve Sanford, speaking as a urban planner, downtown employee, and just involved member of the community. I brought my friend Danielle Ciano. I have a few points to make. First and foremost, I'd like to speak on the, I guess, general support for the development of a day center for our homeless community. I know at a recent city council meeting, there was a discussion around expanding the sit-lie ordinance to other business corridors, and I just would like to support as a stronger kind of strategic long-term measure, really identifying a supportive space with resources for our homeless community to be in during the day so that way they don't have to be on State Street. Secondly, I would just like to say that I'm a board member for Coast, and we have an initiative called the Walk Bike State Street Movement to create a promenade and a biking and walking and vending space along State Street. And so I've heard that idea brought up a number of times by the audience. I'd encourage you to get involved so we could collaborate and bring together interested folks who are interested in that effort. And with that, I recently have been working with Studio Underground, and I'd like to invite Danielle to say a few words about vending on State Street.
Hi, everyone. Happy to be here. This is my very first council meeting. I didn't expect to be speaking, but I'm happy to know this is happening. I'm really pleased at this list. It's really amazing. And I'm here on behalf of a artist collective that's new. We are entrepreneurs and artists, and about 5 of these points really hit us home. We were trying to kind of get it started on our own and want to know how we can help. We're ready to go. So would love to talk to you guys afterwards about some of those things. There's a few people I wanted to introduce myself to afterwards.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Please fill out a slip and give it to Ms. Estrada right here, since I didn't have a slip for you. Yeah. Okay. Ms. Kaufman. The slips are in the back.
Hi, Mayor and Council. Thank you. Appreciate the work by Ms. Johnson. I think it's great, and great to see so many ideas on the brink of fruition. And I submitted a letter as myself, and I'm speaking as myself as a resident today. I also submitted a letter for Coast. And I think a lot within this list, a lot of the short-term specifics have been addressed. But I'm concerned with the process looking forward, and I know this is the very beginning of maybe a longer-term discussion. I'm all for the formation of an economic development department, either within the city or partnering with another organization that has the capacity to start to take on some of these issues as we as a city face. I agree that we need a downtown specific plan and an economic development strategic plan. And I'm really excited that we're starting this process because this is a great time. We as a city can pivot. And a lot of these issues don't just impact the downtown, but they impact us regionally. And economies are rapidly shifting, and the city needs a structure to be able to rapidly respond to the unknown. Many of the ideas presented today have been tackled in other jurisdictions, whether it's doing pop-ups or having street parties or expediting and facilitating the entitlement process. Much of what's been discussed about now has been talked about for years. So let's talk about adopting proactive rather than reactive processes, and let's have this new economic development function be innovative and forward-looking because we want Santa Barbara to adapt and be resilient in a future of unknowns.
All right, thank you. Mr. Watkins, are you here? Did Christian come back? Or Ronaldo or Anthony? No, okay. It looks like you're the last speaker.
Great.
Final word.
No pressure. Thank you, Madam Chair, fellow council members. I'm speaking today as a local citizen. I'm also a designer here in town. I've been doing it for about 17 years, luckily. And I also sit on a local design review board. So I've been lucky that over that time I've had a lot of experience from different sides of the aisle, kind of getting a sense of what challenges people are facing. a number of business owners and property owners in the room I've been lucky enough to work with, and I think their concerns are very real. I don't want to bash the building department because I think they're actually doing a really good job considering that they have a ton of challenges they have to face that we don't see every day. But from the applicant side, it's also hard for us where clients have been promised, several months of free rent, or the business owners have told them one thing, or even anticipated it to be, an easy TI turnover or something like that. But when the reality comes into play and you actually start designing these projects, they do take a lot longer. Things come up that are issues that we never even consider, that are actually real issues that have to be confronted, have to be addressed, so we maintain the overall consistency and beauty of our city looking the way it is now. So I think the issues of visibility and process are kind of what I want to focus on. Process in the sense of things like parking, things like trash. Those are really small issues that you never think about in a project, but I have to bring these up to clients all the time. The first instinct is usually that they push back and say, well, we'll deal with that later. That's not a big deal. And it holds up projects most of the time. They're dealing with issues now that you're not going to get more bang for your buck. You're not getting more seating out of that. Your building's not going to look nicer. It's just going to have trash. It's going to have parking. But if they're holding up a project, you could actually lose the project. I've lost projects because of that. The tenants have decided they can't go forward. They are losing money because they're paying out of their own pocket now to the landlord on rent on a project that's held up. And the business owner is not collecting rent. So I think these little issues like that, I think those are two small areas that get overlooked often. But those are really easy fixes I think would help community development, possibly, if there's some kind of approach that could be streamlined. I know typically this is nuanced, but they don't like to separate exterior and interior improvements if it's on the same property. They like to keep it all under one because it allows the process to be streamlined. What that does, though, is if you can keep builders and professionals and designers moving forward on the interior aspect, you can still work concurrently, hopefully, on the exterior improvements, because that's a totally different design approach. That keeps people moving, though. It keeps the project alive. It keeps the economy going. So I think if there's an opportunity to kind of look at how the process is currently handled and improve it, that would be one opportunity. The other part would just be about visibility. I think right now, as we're looking at the city about ways to improve State Street, I think it's possibly a little disingenuous to have the sign committee or sign police come down up and down State Street and remove all the blade signs or sandwich signs out of State Street for businesses that are putting them up on State. I know it could be an eyesore, but for some businesses who don't have actual State Street frontage,
right,
that's all they get their business off of.
Yeah.
If you're taking away those signs now, those people are losing actual opportunity to get customers into their buildings where they have a State Street address, and so I think that should be looked at as well.
Thanks, Mr. Watkins. Those are good suggestions, and I know people are taking notes. So
thanks.
We'll go ahead and close public comment. Thank you, everybody, for all your ideas. It's to the council now. We have some staff members sitting out there if anyone has any questions, or this would be the time to express your support for some of these ideas. It is the beginning of the conversation, not the end, so this won't be the only time that we address these issues. I don't see any lights, so I will go first. Okay, so Mr. Dominguez and then Mr. Gutierrez.
So I want to start by thanking everyone who's here. The fact that we have such a large turnout is very indicative. We have people from nonprofits, businesses, government, boards and commissions. It's a very comprehensive turnout, and it was great to hear everyone give their ideas and their support for moving forward. I've been working with several groups trying to solve some of these problems. They're very difficult problems to solve because of the state of the economy, because of what's happening with retail, because of the way the economy is moving slowly forward, but not really fast enough to create revolutionary change. And I think what we want to see here is something between evolution and revolution. The ideas we have are all great, but none of them are silver bullets. We probably need to implement most of them to get a little bit of mileage or leverage out of them. So what my motion would be to take the 25 ideas from the August 13th letter that was submitted and add it to the list that was generated by the city, and ask staff to add those ideas into the mix, as well as I believe it was 9 ideas from the downtown organization's retail study, and then come back with a timeline of when we can implement them, what we can do, what the next step would be, so to really incorporate them into our 42 steps. There's a little bit of redundancy, so we can just note that in the list, but then have a plan for implementing the ones that we think have the most opportunity of success. And or if there's going to be a lot of extra costs and we need to move something in the budget, then that's something that staff could bring back to the council to decide how to prioritize this or deprioritize. So for example, I know we're going to put some staff time into looking at our alcohol ordinance. Maybe that's something we could push back to make room for more of this stuff. But that would be my recommendation, would be to incorporate both lists into the city's lists and then bring it back to council to move it forward.
Thank you. Mr. Gutierrez?
I'm actually not ready yet, sorry.
Oh, okay. Ms. Sneddon next.
Thank you. This is really exciting. I think just to have this on the table and to be able to be discussing this so openly, and it's great to see such a turnout today. And we've been getting letters from you and hearing public comment at different times. I've not been here very long, but in the time I've been here, it seems like it's always a topic of conversation. So it's very nice to have it concentrated into one event. And Nina, thank you for the work you've done compiling all this. It's really lovely. We have so many ideas. I would like to add to Councilmember Dominguez those 25 and from the other ideas that we've had to add that to the list. But I am a little worried that if we get too big on a list and not take some action today on prioritizing even 3 or 10 to really start moving, I'm worried we're going to stall a little bit in our momentum. So just some overarching ideas from what we've heard today and from what you presented also. I really support the ideas of the temporary pop-ups and vacant spaces, encouraging short-term leases, whatever we can do to get that moving. And I'd really like to allow the leeway for creativity to try things out. And you talked about, or it's mentioned, the test weekends. I think we might want to consider a test month for something, especially when you're talking about lighting in certain areas or a pedestrian mall. I mean, it might be nice to test that. I realize that that's a bigger issue that we'll have to do some more careful planning on. I'm very supportive of the pedestrian mall, but just the idea that maybe each month Santa Barbara's trying something new and a reason for people to not just come once, but come again, see what we're doing this month, see what we're doing next month, and really kind of allowing that freedom of expression for some of businesses. I do like the parking and shuttle incentives. I think that's going to be a great addition. I really support the Love Your Local Business campaign. Let's see. And for First Thursdays, bringing new ideas to that, sculptures on State Street were a great idea. It brought people down. I am, in general, concerned about not just having family-friendly activities, not just festivals or things to bring families down just once, but when we looked at the downtown Santa Barbara retail strategy, something we didn't go into too much detail today, but I mean, it said 45% of the population fits into 6 psychographics, and the descriptions were, none of them were me. I'll have to say that. There were exurbanites, married, they're high incomes, almost going to retire, urban chic, trendsetters, in style, top tier, and laptops and lattes. And so that's great. That's 45%. But what about the other 45+% that is families and people who've been here for 30 years and still want State Street to be relevant to us and all of us, and also not just wealthy shoppers. I think we're missing some of that appeal on State Street to just our regular folks who want to hang out down there and don't really have a place to linger, which is another reason I like closing the State Street, or opening it to pedestrians more than closing it. And just in general, heading towards that, not just high-end shopping, but also experiences for the rest of us. I really support the increased ambassadors. I know that isn't coming online yet, but just all we can do to keep supporting that. Love the idea of music and arts in the streets, and what we can do for testing on that, I really support. I can't say enough how much I would support a day center for the homeless. I think we have to really be constantly addressing this issue. It's really hard for me to say I'm not sure what the issue is here, but when people who've opened the Sojourner and the Wildcat and Opal and some of our longest standing favoritist restaurants in town are saying how horrible the process is, there's a problem. And I'm not sure where we address that or how, but it needs to be addressed. We can't keep hearing stories like this. And I'll leave it at that with that. In the short term, I think we need to get a priority of 10 things that we get moving now. And in the long term, I would support a strategic plan with a facilitator, an economic development position, a dedicated position for that, and to be working with our multiple organizations who came and shared ideas with us today. And we really do need a focal point hub person who is our contact for that.
Are you supportive of an outside consultant to help us corral these ideas?
I am. I think it would be excellent to have an outside consultant, but then also an in-house single contact person to help facilitate just that first conversation to see what we need to go further to bring all these ideas together and really start prioritizing. I mean, if we're adding on 25 things to this list and asking staff to come back and prioritize them for us, I think that's a tall order, and I would like to see that be more of a engaged process while not stalling some of the things that we can do right away.
All right. Mr. Friedman?
So first I want to say one of the coolest things I've ever been a part of was having Bill Pintard throw us a baseball.
Yes.
But then it got me a little nervous because I thought it was a setup so you knew who to throw the tomatoes at later. But all jokes aside, I appreciate the tone of tonight's meeting and the constructiveness. And first I want to thank Mayor Murillo and Councilmember Rouse for bringing this forward. As you can see by the number of people here and the perspectives, it was something that the community was calling for, and it was something that could bring us together. So the two of you, your leadership in bringing this forward as a first step and continuing that process is much appreciated. I also want to thank everyone who spoke tonight, everyone who sent us emails from the public and the business community, because we are in this together. We're your council, and we need to hear from you and work with you, and your comments tonight show that you understand that, we understand that, and it's a great building block going forward. And in particular, I want to thank Ms. Johnson for her work on the presentation tonight. Santa Barbara has unique challenges for a city our size. Considering the size of our town, the Funk Zone itself would be an area that could be a vital downtown or even the waterfront. And then you add on State Street, and again, we're a relatively small town, so it presents a unique challenge for us in how to basically bring all that together into one vibrant, cohesive vision. And then we also have areas that are coming up. Newshawk today talked about the Lagoon District. I've heard it called SoCo, south of Coda. And so those are other competing areas as well. And then you have Upper State. So we have a lot of economic opportunities here. But we're focusing on the downtown and how to make that congruous with our waterfront. And the real challenge for us is to put all these together and make Santa Barbara the world-class city that we know it to be. And how do we bring locals and tourists back to downtown to have a people-centered experience? The spreadsheet today that Ms. Johnson provided, plus the suggestions from Ms. Cooper and those who put those together, show that we need to commit the resources to addressing the long-term needs that we have downtown. Some of the examples that I'm proud to see that we've done are the 101 underpass improvements are underway, funding of Library Plaza, the Lower State Street Visitor Center that's coming online, the Ambassador VIP program, and the coming alcohol sales ordinance. And I just want to say that Councilmember Sneddon and I today put a memo to bring that issue to the council in the near future so we can address some of the issues that have come up, which were in Ms. Cooper's document that she gave us. So that will be coming to the council later this year. And public art back on State Street is a huge draw. However, I think it's evident that we need to use our momentum today to propel us forward and develop a plan for action, and now is the opportunity to do that. I'm reminded of a quote from leadership guru Jim Collins in his book From Good to Great that basically says, get the right people on the bus, the wrong people off the bus, and the right people in the right seats. Well, today I can see that our bus is full, And we have the right people here, and now we need to roll up our sleeves and get into some of these really difficult issues. Concepts I'd like to see us consider is the idea of proposed during the budget for a consultant to come in. The reason that I think it's important that we should possibly take that action tonight if we can, when I'm done, I'll ask Mr. Casey on how we would move forward with that, is it provides the extra capacity for the city administrator and his staff to deal with these issues. Because that's the key, because it's going to have an extra workload on Ms. Johnson. And if we want to bring some of these priority issues forward, to have that extra capacity will benefit all of us as we work through these issues. It also dedicates a professional that will compile and organize the ideas and data from the workshops, public meetings, the downtown organization study, and other sources into an accessible format, including tonight. I think we heard a lot of great ideas that we've heard before and some new ones tonight. So that's what the consultant would do, is kind of bring all these together and help us to prioritize and develop a plan that that will set us up to have a plan, and look at what best practices from other jurisdictions and what we can do better and what they're doing, in addition to meeting with many of our key stakeholders here to get your input one-on-one if needed, and also look at our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and come back with a set of options for us to consider in a reasonable time frame. I think recommendations 1 and 2 from the recommendations that were presented to us, which the top 10 recommendations fall within that, hiring the consultant, because I think that will get us to an economic development director, which I think long-term we do need. And then also other things I support would be housing downtown and seeing how we can make the necessary changes to facilitate that, make sure that it does have an affordability component in that. The day center is a huge issue for us, so that the homeless do have a place to go and our place can refer them. Along with that, a campaign to end cash handouts. I think that's something that it's low-hanging fruit, and I think we can implement that. And I think it was almost there, is my understanding, and I think that needs to go forward sooner rather than later. And including improving the community development process, including our boards and commissions, more training or just understanding their roles, I think is a big step forward in that process. And then I also support opening a pedestrian promenade downtown. I think it's part of that people-centered experience, and having more events with live music, including maybe involving some of our local bands or even high schools, because if my kids will be in high school and sooner than I hope, but if they were in a band in high school or part of the choir and they were able to perform at the farmers market on Tuesday, I know all the parents would be down there. So you're getting families back in and the children down there. So I think that's a huge, and that's also part of recommendation number 5 that came out of the document we received. And then in conjunction with the promenade is the library plaza. Ultimately, that will bring people downtown because we will be able to have a usable space that we can really use to focus on literary events, partner with the Granada and others that are down there. And then looking at the arts downtown. And then finally, I do want to appreciate the downtown organization, and it's number 6 in the document we received, of taking a lead in the conversation with the property owners, because I think you're a good liaison between government and the property owners to build that trust between us. So I appreciate that. And just in case, I think there was one last thing is, I think it's an interesting idea. I don't know how we explore it, but I just want to raise it again, is a civic center. It's out there, but I just want to repeat it because it's one of those things that kind of hadn't heard that really before. And it's something that, hey, why not? Let's at least have it in the conversation. And with that, I would ask Mr. Casey for the consultant, and I know there would be a cost associated with that. Is tonight the appropriate time to make a recommendation, or would I have to come back? Because I would make a recommendation that we would move, or motion to fund that, move forward and fund that position, because I think the longer we wait, and everything gets delayed. So I'd rather take an action now to at least move that process forward.
Madam Mayor, council members, just to answer that specific question Councilmember Friedman have made, you can give us direction as staff to go and begin the process of releasing a request for proposal to hire a consultant. We would have to bring back a selected consultant for the funding to you at a later date, but you could initiate that process tonight if you wanted to.
Then as part of the discussion, then I'll make that motion.
I will second the motion.
And there's a second from Mr. Rouse. Any discussion on that particular motion? We're all still chiming in. Well, Mr. Rouse, your light's on. Go ahead. You've seconded the motion, and your turn.
Well, thank you all. We ton of ideas. I took down everybody's notes, everybody's suggestions that they read. Mr. Conklin actually had a pretty succinct notion that we needed a comprehensive long-term plan. I think we need two. We need a short-term plan and a long-term plan. If we go to try to implement this entire list, we'll implement nothing kind of ever forever. So the first thing is Mr. Friedman's idea is let's start out with a consultant. My personal priority and what's the common priority, I think, for most of the speakers I have in my little notes here were things about the process, the permit process, making it streamlined. I love the word ombudsman. It's one of my favorite words, so I'd like to explore that possibility, and that could be something folded into what the consultant helps us bring forward. I think that the ability for us to have businesses be able to develop in a more streamlined way is going to pay us back in terms of revenues, in terms of vitality, all the things we're doing here tonight. So to me, personally, that's a big priority. Second priority, which has always been my first priority, of course, is the uniform presence on State Street, which we will maintain, and we will try to supplement as Ms. Johnson helps us fund our ambassador program more and more. So, but I would like us to break out, like, for example, the suggestions of our improvements in social services and all that. That's a really big bite for a city, especially when the county is actually, that's what the county does. I think that that's a great subject for discussion, but I think we're going to get lost in the details if we go there now. I think we have to focus on what we can do about bringing State Street back. We have to focus on getting business back, whatever that means about traffic and circulation, whatever that means about business storefronts, whatever that means about getting people through the process. Let's focus on what we can do. Let's eat the elephant one bite at a time, as opposed to trying to get the whole thing going at once. Great list of recommendations, but it's a big laundry list. Santa's not going to be able to deliver those all on Christmas Eve. So let's focus on where we can go first. Let's follow up with Mr. Friedman suggested, which is get the consultant or get an RFP for a consultant back, and we'll fund that and we'll go forward. But I think, and in breaking off into, and I would suggest also, Mr. Casey, if possible, to break off into, or Madam Mayor, either subcommittee, something that's going to be a little more mobile, a little bit quicker, that can report back to stakeholders, engage as we need to, but at least move that ball forward in a more in a quicker fashion than we would as we just have this big process going forward and try to attack the whole list at once. I think that might be a mistake.
Okay.
So there.
Thank you.
Looking at you.
Okay. Mr. Hart.
Well, I agree with Councilmember Rouse and Councilmember Friedman about the moving this forward as expeditiously as possible with the consultant's assistance, trying to take a big, long list and make it more prioritized. But one thing I do want to do before I talk more about that is thank the Santa Barbara Independent for the articles about downtown. I think that was the most comprehensive framing of this issue that I have seen in our local media. I think that did a lot to raise the awareness and the depth of knowledge about this subject. This is a very, very dense, complicated issue that, as we heard tonight, integrates lots of different things about cities, from social services to economics, transportation. All of these pieces fit together and they rub against each other. And we heard a little bit of that tonight. We had, in 2 minutes, folks can't get to that second level of depth to probe into where those things rub against each other, but I can assure you they do. All of the things where people are very strong and passionate about, we just simply need to do this, has an impact on that. And if we had the time to get into that, to get into this 50-odd list, we would see these conflicts. And we would see, it isn't as simple as that. And that's where we need help, and that's where we need some focus. And I really liked Councilmember Rouse's last throwaway suggestion of a council subcommittee, because we do want to move fast on this. And we have Councilmember Rouse, Mayor Murillo have already taken the lead on this. I think Councilmember Friedman would be an excellent addition to that. His point about the consultant and having this process early on in the budget process when he raised that, I think that's a natural three-person council subcommittee. But I do want to say that it is real. Everyone can agree we ought to have a perfectly smooth development permit process, and it ought to be quick, and it should be decisive and clear. And everybody agrees on that until we have the next item on our agenda, where we have a development process and a development project in a neighborhood that is complicated because it's next to historic structures, and there's 50 neighbors that have different opinions. And I would hope many of you would stay around to see the complexity of that. And the folks that have to administer the rules that have been created over 50 years to make Santa Barbara, as Ms. Blackerby said, a signature community where you will go anywhere in the world and tell people that you're from Santa Barbara, and they will say, oh, that's a beautiful place. You're really lucky. That is not an accident. That is not simple to achieve that. There is an amazing brand and value in our brand, and we have the best bones in the downtown of any place I've traveled, and I've traveled a lot of places. And I think we have to be very careful of that. That is the most important thing for this council to do, is to do no harm. And we need to be careful and deliberative and collaborative and work with the downtown organization as a partner in this, have a communication dialogue with the property owners who have a lot of financial investment in this, but also have a lot of history and a lot of complicated politics within that community as well. And some of that we heard tonight. So that's my view of things, and I hope we can take this enthusiasm and this opportunity to move forward in a collaborative way.
Thank you. Councilmember Gutierrez.
Thank you. I have a couple of ideas that I didn't really hear that I think could revitalize State. One would be if you can help me help me out with whether or not you've discussed it already, to have free Wi-Fi all throughout State Street. Also, going off of what Councilmember Hart was talking about, the streamlining of the permit process and having it in an app-based form, hopefully could help. I know some of the staff had already mentioned to me that they're looking into that, but I think that Santa Barbara really needs to utilize the current technology that exists right now. And I just noticed in the meeting, like, why are we still filling out paper speaking slips? Couldn't they just enter it somewhere electronically? Just a side note, sorry. But another one, a former restaurant owner actually told this to me right before the meeting started, and they were too kind of nervous to speak in public about it. But they brought up to me that the possibility of a temporary lift on property tax for local and good standing property owners on State Street in hopes to lower the rent. They claim that this worked in New York. I don't know if you looked into that or heard about that.
Madam Mayor and Councilmember Gutierrez, no, I haven't, but I have seen some programs where they have some type of credit. So there might be some way that we can organize a program, or there's some type of rebate that comes back.
Okay. Other than that, thank you for the good work you put into it, and thanks for everybody that came out.
And will you be supporting the motion to have a consultant? Okay, very good. I will too. I'll be voting for that motion. And for everyone who signed on to the letter, I will read it very carefully. There's a lot of ideas there. I'm guarantee you that staff will read all of that very carefully. It came today. It hasn't been published to the public yet. We'll put it on the city website as part of this discussion. I am ready to work with Mr. Birdie and try to find a place for our homeless. That's a big thing for me to say as mayor. We know there's a need for a day center, and it's going to be a big job, and I'm going to need a lot of people to help me do that. And I really appreciate that you were willing to put in some financial assistance, and I appreciate all the other businesses in this town that recognize that they need to contribute as well to our homelessness problem. I do support housing downtown, and whether it's the AUD, maybe not. The AUD has a bad taste in some people's mouths these days, but we need to look at the historic resources downtown, the parking issue. But what I'm hearing I hear from my colleagues that they support it. It's just a matter of creating that pathway, because if I'm correct, Mr. Buell, State Street is already zoned for multi-use residential and commercial projects. So we don't need to change the zoning. It's already there. So it's just a matter of us creating a program that we're happy with, that doesn't make Santa Barbara feel overdeveloped, where we get the input of downtown residents and businesses and create a pathway. I support temporary street closures. There's a lot of businesses that are nervous about permanent street closure. So that's going to take some community building. You were very enthusiastic about pedestrian, bike-only areas. That's a big discussion. But I think that if we did some temporary street closures and saw what it felt like, and felt the vitality of like the farmers market, and there's car shows sometimes downtown that have a lot of foot traffic and a lot of excitement. So I would go that far. Yes, we need to improve our permitting program. And Mr. Rouse, I back you up on that. It's really time for us to streamline the process and make it easy for people to create businesses downtown. And then dance permits and street events and liquor licenses. Henry Dubroff, I'm not sure if he's still here with the Pacific Coast Business Times. There he is. He had one little sentence for me: make State Street fun. And I really appreciate that, Mr. Dubroff, and esteemed member of the business community yourself. That's really, really good advice. We're also getting suggestions that we need a retail recruiter. So someone who will go and recruit other businesses from, say, Old Town Pasadena, get them to come here. And the call for an economic development director. I can tell you those are expensive positions if they're city positions. If our business organizations, our partners are interested in doing that's another discussion about funding. And for us to fund a business consultant in our tight budget is really a big deal for us. And I want to make that clear to people that that's a big step for us to do that. And Randy Rouse and I, at the beginning of the year, we made a list of what we thought was the vision for downtown Santa Barbara. And our list was awesome. And it kind of mirrored what other people are saying. But the reason for a consultant is to create a public process. It can't just be us or you with good ideas. We need some public workshops. Everybody come in, and so that everyone takes ownership of this plan for Santa Barbara. So I am wholeheartedly voting for the business consultant to help us corral all of these ideas. So let's go ahead and vote on that, since we had a motion. Did everyone have their say to the motion? Okay, question from Councilmember Snedden.
Thank you. Will we still be making further motions or discussion about what we'll be doing in the short term, so that we can leave here with staff having actionable items from what's happening in the short term, or should we add it to this motion?
We could make more motions after that one. Okay. I heard from you support pop-ups, a parking shuttle, the buy local program. those were all great ideas.
Yeah, I'd like to just support the latitude to have some creativity in some of these ideas with staff, coming from staff. And as long as that's, but I said that I wasn't sure if we needed a motion to have that move forward or not. I would like to be able to walk away from today knowing that short term some things are going to start happening.
Okay. We can revisit a short-term motion.
After.
But let's go ahead and, Mr.
I had a question about the specific scope of the consultant. Do you want to give us more detail of is it just from number 1 on this list?
We could ask Mr. Casey for his recommendation on that.
I'll let Mr. Casey go first, and then You want me to go first?
No, I'm happy.
All right. Either way, I kind of went over it earlier in my comments. So
You did. So, Madam Mayor and council members, maybe if I could ask the clerk just to read the motion so we're clear about what the motion is on the table, and then I can answer Councilmember Dominguez's. And I wanted to ask that same question just so there's clarity about the scope of what we're talking about. So if the clerk could maybe reread the motion first, Madam Mayor.
The motion is to direct staff to hire a consultant.
Exactly. Okay. So, with that, my interpretation of that, and so I'll put that out for the maker of the motion and the seconder, and then council can deliberate on that or not. I thought there was a very good distinction about whether this is kind of a short-term effort or kind of a long-term visioning effort. And my feeling, based upon listening to your dialogue, and my recommendation would be short-term. So it's short-term and focused. It's trying to come up with essentially a strategic plan of prioritizing efforts for the city to focus on revitalizing downtown. We have gotten a lot of great suggestions from a lot of different public comments today, prior public comments. We've got the infamous Cooper plan now that has a lot of great ideas. But we gotta focus. We gotta prioritize and identify kind of those top items that we can really have the capacity to accomplish and strategically do. So bringing in a consultant in that looks at all these different dialogues and discussions that have occurred over the last 18 months. Earlier, I think in the mayor's introduction, look at the recommendations that came out of the downtown Santa Barbara retail study, the women's economic venture efforts, the public comments you've got today, the AIA charrette, a lot of those good works, and kind of consolidate all those, bring some best practices from other communities. We're not the only city that's struggling with this issue, and so looking at what other cities are doing. I think having a few targeted public outreach and meeting with stakeholders, I want to be careful not to get bogged down in process, because then your short-term focus becomes a much longer-term focus, and I think there's a sense of immediacy that we need to address. And so that would be my recommendation of kind of the scope, and I don't know if Councilmember Friedman wanted to add anything in addition.
Yeah, and you hit on many of the points I mentioned in my comments earlier. The one thing I wanted to clarify is this is one-time funding. It's not a permanent position, so it's one-time funding that would get us in a reasonable time frame, and we'll figure out what that is when it would come back to report to us to give us more actionable items so we keep the momentum going. And in the meantime, supporting what Councilmember Sneddon said about having some short-term issues we can bring back.
Yeah, and if I could add one more thing. The one thing I wouldn't want this consultant to do on is process improvements for our planning procedure. I think those are two separate things, and I would like to either amend the motion or have another motion come from council. But I think there's a number of recommendations that we've heard today that we need to be pursuing and thinking about. And if you do a council subcommittee, that might be a good vehicle to kind of talk about some of those recommendations about what we might be able to implement to try to help on the planning and building side as well.
So business consultant short-term to look at downtown issues specifically, maybe a city council subcommittee to look at permitting and that part?
No, Madam Mayor and Council Member, I think that, let Mr. Hart speak for himself, but I think his recommendation was a council subcommittee that kind of oversees all these different efforts. Exactly. It can be someone we can bounce the scope of work on the consultant process by, make sure we're on the right track before we go out for an RFP. Yep. But something that's a little quicker and more responsive than trying to find a council agenda to get on, as your council agendas get quite busy. I think that's kind of where he was going in that regard.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was suggesting. And I'll make a motion after this motion is off the table to appoint that council subcommittee.
But let's have Ms. Johnson tell us. There's already things happening, right? So the short term We are putting together the pop-up permit program already. Ms. Johnson has a plan to put together commercial property brokers and people who are looking for opportunities for pop-ups. The Humane Society told me they want to do a pop-up adoption, animal adoption. There's a lot of people wanting to get in on the pop-up opportunities. We're already working on the window dressing program. So that's a short-term program that's already happening. All of our law enforcement and Home for Good programs, those are already underway. So there are, what else, Ms. Johnson, is most of that list that you had?
Yes.
Those are already happening.
Yes, Madam Mayor and council members, almost everything that's on the list, except for items at the very bottom to consider and anything marked on hold, all of those are active projects. They're all moving, and some of them are moving faster than others. And some of the short-term efforts, the test weekend, I mean, these are things that different groups could move forward on in 2 months, and that gives people something to work on. They've got a few things that they have in mind, and they can move forward on it. The temporary pop-up event, we already have a lot of people showing interest, collectives, entrepreneurs looking for space, property owners talking about offering their spaces. So we can just put together an event to introduce parties, and the arrangements can take care of themselves between parties.
Very good. Mr. Casey, Mr. Buell, Mr. Stuffler, I heard a lot today about improving the process for people looking to open businesses and get their building permits and other permits from us. Please tell us how we can give you support for that today. If you have anything to let us know, if you have a response. There was just such a density of that today. I'm hoping you can respond. Mr. Buell is our Community Development Director.
Madam Mayor, can I just ask one follow-up question? We kind of got sidetracked about the consultant before we get into this separate motion.
We have a motion going.
Okay.
We have a motion to pick a consultant, and then we're going to go to a subcommittee to make sure all of these things are going forward. Those are two things that are on the table.
They're separate. Yeah,
but they're separate, yeah.
Right now, you only have the motion on the table on the consultant contract,
Right.
So maybe finishing that
So
conversation first.
You want to vote on that now?
Well, I just have one more question on that.
Okay.
And that's related to downtown Santa Barbara. Had a speaker with a group, and I want to ask for more clarity. It sounded like what we're talking about the consultant doing is similar to what they wanted to do, and I'm not 100% sure if that's correct. And we can probably have both a consultant that we hire and work on it, and if they want to do a similar thing, but I just want to make sure we're not duplicating efforts. So I'm not sure if we want to ask them to clarify, or is it independent of what they want to do?
Mr. Lombardi, the question is, will us hiring a short-term business consultant to corral all of these ideas into a strategic plan conflict with what you had in mind, or work together?
Madam Mayor, council members, I don't think it'll conflict. We're not going to hire a consultant. What we want to suggest that we do is that downtown Santa Barbara be the conduit that brings all these together. So the consultant, we work with the consultant, we bring in all the different factions that are doing this, and then we come to the city with these suggestions. For the city to do this and to have this process go quickly, I think are two different things. I think it would be much better if the private sector does it. With your help, if you want to hire the consultant, that's great. Have the consultant work with us, and we work with all these other groups. We bring them together. We do it on a much quicker basis and get these short-term objectives out and get them taken care of. But, we're here to work every way we can with you guys, so that's what we're here for.
Okay. Does that answer your question? That would...
It does, and I wonder, is there a way we can fund the consultant that they hire and manage if they can do it faster than a government agency can?
No, I don't agree with that. I think if we're paying for the consultant, we need to oversee them. That's just me. Mr. Rouse?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, as I visioned this going forward with the motion, it was that we would retain a consultant. The RFP would come to us. We'd decide what the scope was. This DO would definitely have a seat at the table because they're going to be the implementers of where we go forward. But I think we're going to need to steer this. And I see Mr. Lombardi's concern about the delay. but I also don't want to get this too far afield into interests that are contrary to what's going to come back to council, which could happen. So my interpretation of what we're talking about is having an RFP brought to us. We decide what the scope of the issues are. The DO has the DSB or whatever you guys are now has a seat at the table as the implementation, but we work as partners, not necessarily one or the other. Mr. Casey.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Rouse, just a question on that. Do you want the RFP to come back to the full council for the scope of work, or do you want to just kind of expedite that? If you do end up creating a subcommittee, we could run by them as well. Just kind of different speed scenarios if you want to stay engaged as the full 7 of you.
I didn't think the RFP was going to come back to us. That would slow it down, Mr. Rouse.
Expedite.
That'd be my recommendation. That would be my recommendation.
Have
as
we
well,
moved
and
to
I
make
think
the
we
committee yet, or?
And that'll be the next topic.
Okay,
right.
because we need to do that. But yeah, I agree with that. But having some moving quicker is better. Having a smaller committee is better than coming back to full council.
You had something to add, Councilmember Sneddon?
I do. I support expediting, but also I see the consultant as not just looking at retail, and downtown Santa Barbara is maybe looking mainly at retail, but also at some of these other functions as well. So I definitely see the consultant working very closely with downtown Santa Barbara and all the stakeholders there, but I see that as just one of the prongs in the wheel of what's going to revitalize State Street. So I
That's
would
clear.
like to retain our
That's clear.
Consultant.
Something else, Mr. Dominguez?
Yeah, and I want to make sure we don't put off any immediate action because we are hiring a consultant. There's things that have been on our list for over a year, and I don't think we need a consultant to come tell us 6 months from now, you should have done this 2 years ago. So I hope we wouldn't say, oh, we've hired a consultant, we can't do some of these things. So
That's what our subcommittee will look at, and that's the next step. So let's go ahead and vote on that motion to hire a consultant. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Mr. Hart, your light's on?
Yes.
That was for the next item?
Yes.
Okay, so that passes. Very good. Mr. Hart, to the next
I'll
item.
make a motion to appoint a council subcommittee consisting of Mayor Murillo, Councilmember Rouse, and Councilmember Friedman to be a steering committee for the effort that we just described.
Second.
Yes, I'm willing, and Mr. Rouse seconded it. And are you saying, Mr. Friedman, you're willing to serve on that? Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Dominguez, to the motion?
I'd be happy to serve on it. I have 10 blocks in my district on State Street. So if this is is the purpose of the subcommittee to focus just on State Street commercial issues, or are you including Coast Village Road, Milpas,
I think
Upper
it's
State?
downtown.
Okay.
Mr. Hart.
So I'd be happy to serve on the committee since I have, I think, the biggest portion of downtown in my district.
Okay, I appreciate that. The motion was made for myself and Rouse and Friedman and seconded by Rouse. So let's go ahead and vote on that. You have something for a question?
Is this a temporary subcommittee just to oversee for the consultant, or is this a long-term downtown committee that's being formed?
I think it's just for the consultant.
Okay.
I think it's an ad hoc committee related to the consultant.
Thank you.
Right. So, Mr. Dominguez, thank you for offering yourself. So, all in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? No. Okay, so good. That passed too. We have more responsibility, don't we? Very good. And then, what was the third thing hanging out there? Oh,
Madam Mayor, if you could hear from Mr. Buell, the Community Development Director.
Mr. Buell, thank you.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, George Buell, Community Development Director. What I would recommend with regards to process improvements is that staff look at the list that we've received from Ms. Cooper and also from downtown property owners, take each of them into consideration and report back to the subcommittee in terms of what we can do with a prioritized list and the things that low-hanging fruit that we go after, and then we also look at the more challenging things that might be more difficult, but nonetheless they will get looked at.
And would you be willing to meet with Ms. Cooper and maybe a couple of other people from her contingent?
Yes.
On the items?
Yes.
Okay. Can I have a motion to that effect, what Mr. Buell just suggested? Ms. Sneddon?
I would like to move what Mr. Buell suggested, but would respectfully ask you to read it back again.
My recommendation is that the council direct staff to work with the council subcommittee in addressing each of the items that speak to community development process improvements, with the idea of prioritizing that list and bringing it back to the council after subcommittee consideration and recommendation.
So moved.
And a second from Mr. Rouse. Any other discussion to that item? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. I think that covers it for this particular discussion. I'm so grateful for everyone. Very quickly, Mr. Dominguez.
So I wanted to come back to the top 10 recommendations and ask if we can start some of those in the meantime. So I would move that we ask staff to come back after recess, after our summer recess, having examined the top 10 and see what we can get started on right away.
Mr. Rouse?
One thing to that, Madam Mayor, is that the recommendations, what Ms. Johnson put out was published, and what the top 10 recommendations we have from the stakeholders has not been a public document thus far. And the mayor mentioned that before. So I agree with moving forward on them and maybe giving staff direction to can put that, having Ms. Johnson's obviously going to stay on the case. But I think to actually try to take action on something when it hasn't even really been a publicly documented or agendized item, I think it might be a little shaky.
Yeah, and Madam Mayor and council members, the top
Can
10...
people keep it quiet, please? We're still having a discussion. Thank you.
I think about half of the items will be covered by Mr. Buell and his analysis. We just committed to looking at those. The consultant was one of the top recommendations as well, which you've already asked us to look at. And I think some of those other items kind of fall into that list of what do we prioritize through that consultant from what we've heard from other entities as well. So I think we're going to cover a good amount of those 10 with the 3 actions you've already taken today.
Thank you. That was a great suggestion, however. So we'll go ahead and close this item. We need to take a break so that the next appellants and applicants can set up their equipment. We're on a 5-minute break, please.